Welcome back, brothers, to Amalur. Tonight we're diving into the lore of the Ark of Omen campaign. Before I get to the madness, be sure to like and comment any videos and topics you want to see in the future. Be sure to subscribe from the Emperor. I want to thank you guys for the support. You've been killing it. Now, let's get to the madness.
The galaxy bled in silence, because no throat vast enough existed to scream for it. Across the dark half of the Imperium, beyond the wounded radiance of the Great Rift, worlds died without witness. Shrine planets burned with their bells still tolling, each bronze peal dragging through smoke, black enough to stain the clouds for generations. Cathedral spires split under orbital fire and toppled through choirs of ash, crushing pilgrims who had spent their final breaths praying to an emperor who did not answer in words. Hive worlds locked their blast shutters and drowned anyway, not beneath water, but beneath fire, madness, hunger, and the butcher press of invasion tides. Fortress moons spat their ammunition into the void until their magazines ran dry, then their guns clicked empty at the descending dark. Imperium Nihilus had become a corpse that refused to know it was dead. Astropathic choirs screamed themselves blind in sanctified vaults. Their throats tore open under the strain of messages that arrived as burning fragments, contradictory prophecies, and images of impossible machines crawling through the warp. Some died kneeling in their silver cages, their skulls venting steam from the sockets where their eyes had boiled. Others survived long enough to speak only a single word before their tongues blackened and split. Ark. The word crossed the dark like a plague bell. They came from the tides of unreality as continent-sized coffins, as blasphemous moons of iron and bone, as space hulks whose ancient wreckage had been dragged together by hatred, industry, and demonic will. They translated out of the Empyrean in bursts of corpse light, their hulls crawling with shrines to gods that should never be named, and gun batteries large enough to erase cities with a single broadside. Their arrival killed lesser minds before the first shot was fired. Auspec's returns contradicted themselves. Machine spirits sobbed binary prayers. Navigators clawed at their third eyes and begged their captains to turn away. The Arks of Omen did not come as a fleet seeking conquest in the mortal sense. They came as a sentence passed upon reality. One emerged above the fortress world of Mordak's Bastion, where the Astra Militarum had layered its continents in trenches, macro redoubts, void shield nexuses, and ammunition catacombs. The defenders had sworn by regimental banner, by St. Drusus, by the throne, and by the names of every dead officer whose bones lay entombed beneath the primary citadel. Their guns opened together. The sky became a furnace of flak, lance fire, missile wakes, and burning interceptors. For 3 days, the fortress world held. On the 4th, the Ark descended until its shadow covered the capital continent. Its underside opened like the mouth of a god engine. Gravity failed. Bastions ripped free from their foundations and rose into the air, carrying screaming soldiers, tanks, command bunkers, priests, munition stores, and statues of the Emperor into the dark. Then the Ark fired its ventral macro shrines and hammered the floating debris back into the planet. The fortress world died under the weight of its own defenses. Its generals never knew why the enemy had come. They believed they were the objective. They were only the noise around the lock. Another Ark tore through the defenses of Vel Sanctus, a reliquary world whose cathedrals were built over the tombs of martyrs. Black Legion assault claws pierced the basilica domes. Word-bearers chanted through vox amplifiers, while cultists dragged reliquary caskets from vaults sealed since the age of apostasy. Iron warriors broke the Saint engines with siege drills and melter charges. Demons capered through incense smoke, wearing skins peeled from confessors who had refused to recant. Sisters of battle died around the reliquary steps, bolters firing until their gauntlets locked around empty weapons, and their armor ran slick with blood. The invaders took one broken shard of obsidian and gold from beneath the corpse of a canonized martyr. Millions died, so that fragment could be lifted by a dark apostle, kissed with a tongue split by demonic scripture, and carried through a warp portal that drank it into angles no mortal geometry could hold. On the edge of the Morkant Drift, an Imperial boarding action succeeded. That was what the surviving Vox records claimed. A strike cruiser of the Angel's Revenant, crippled and dying, rammed an arc through its starboard quarter. Terminators teleported into the wound. Breaching teams followed through smoke, radiation, and raining molten metal. They fought deck by deck through butcher holds, where mortals hung from hooks in layers, through manufactoria, where slaves were rendered down into lubricant for demon engines, through artillery chapels, where macro shells were blessed in blood and loaded by chains of limbless servitors. They killed the warpsmith commanding the inner furnace. They planted charges in the plasma heart. Their captain gave the final order while holding the reactor shrine alone, his armor cracked, his faceplate gone, one eye hanging ruined against his cheek. By his will, deny them. The Ark died in white fire. So did the strike cruiser, 3 Imperial escorts, a pursuing frigate, and every loyalist aboard. The Administratum marked the action as a victory. A week later, in the drowned vaults of a dead moon far from the blast, a key fragment recovered before the Ark's destruction passed from the hands of a warp talon into the custody of a creature that had never once considered the dead worthy of remembrance. Thus did the war reveal its first truth. Chaos did not need to win every battle. It only needed to decide what victory meant. Upon the bridge of the Vengeful Spirit, Abaddon the Despoiler watched the Carrion Galaxy through hololithic storms and fire-stained glass. The command deck was vast enough to swallow cathedrals. Chains hung from vaults lost in darkness. Banners taken from murdered chapters and broken crusades stirred in air recycled through ancient lungs of iron. The deck shook with the labor of machine spirits too old and too savage to be called obedient. The Despoiler stood motionless among the murmuring Strategium engines. He did not roar. He did not froth. He did not cast aside counsel in the manner of lesser tyrants drunk on their own blood. Abaddon had not endured 10,000 years of war because he mistook fury for command. Fury was a blade. Hate was a furnace. Faith, ambition, vengeance, hunger, despair, pride, all were weapons if held by a hand strong enough not to be cut by them. Worlds turned in the hololith before him. Some burned red, some flickered black, some were marked by sigils of the Pantheon, others bore the cold, precise glyphs of Vashtor's design. Each dying world was not a trophy. Each fleet sent to ruin was not a gesture. Each champion unleashed into slaughter was not an indulgence. They were thrown knives, and all of them pointed toward the same hidden throat. A Black Legion warlord in Terminator plate knelt at the edge of the command dais, his armor pitted by void ash and shrine world dust. He had returned from the Vel Sanctus assault with half his warband dead and his left arm replaced by a twitching augmetic still wet with new grafting. In both hands, he held a sealed reliquary case of black metal. "My lord," he said, voice low through the Vox grill. The fragment was retrieved before the Imperial counterstrike. The word-bearers claim the martyr vault sang when it was opened. Abaddon looked down at him with eyes that had watched the long war consume heroes, saints, traitors, brothers, and gods in waiting. "Let them claim song," he said. "Did it arrive?" "It did." "Then their dead were useful." The warlord bowed his head lower. He knew better than to ask whether the dead were to be honored. Among the Black Legion, honor existed, but it was not wasted on corpses that had not changed the shape of fate. At Abaddon's right, reality clicked. The sound was small, almost delicate, and utterly wrong aboard a warship whose every breath was thunder. Cogs of brass and blackened silver unfolded in the air where nothing had stood. Chains of light tightened around a wound in space. The wound opened with the reluctance of flesh beneath a slow knife. Vashtor the Archiphane stepped through. He was not shaped for comfort. He was industry given malice, a demon whose existence made the air taste of hot metal, old oil, and flayed nerves. Wings of mechanical cruelty folded behind him, every pinion a blade or tool or instrument of incision. His body suggested sinew only where machinery found sinew useful. Pistons sighed beneath parchment flesh. Furnace light pulsed in the cage of his torso. His face held neither hunger nor joy, only calculation sharpened into sentience. Those aboard the bridge who served the gods by passion recoiled from him. The Khorne-sworn hated his stillness. The Slaanesh-marked despised his restraint. The servants of Nurgle distrusted his clean mechanisms. The sorcerers of Tzeentch watched him with the unease of creatures who knew a rival pattern when they saw one. Abaddon did not move. "Archiphane," he said. "War Master," Vashtor replied, and his voice slid across the bridge like a scalpel drawn along glass. The procession continues. Losses remain within tolerable thresholds. Resistance has refined the sequence rather than hindered it. A lesser commander would have asked how many had died. Abaddon did not. "The key," he said. Vashtor raised one taloned hand. Around his fingers revolved broken fragments of impossible provenance, some metal, some stone, some bone, some not matter at all, but memory caught in shape. They circled one another without touching. Their shadows fell in different directions. "Every relic has a lock," Vashtor said. "Every oath has a fault line. Every soul has a hinge. The ignorant worship doors. The wise learn where they open." One of the strategium slaves nearby began to convulse. The mortal had looked too long at the fragments. His jaw stretched until the tendons snapped. His teeth burst from his gums in a wet scatter across the deck. Binary static poured from his throat, though he had no augmetic voice box. A black legionnaire crushed his skull under one boot, without looking away from his console. Abaddon watched the fragments turning. "You speak as though the galaxy is a machine. It is more useful when treated as one. It bleeds. All engines leak." A low growl of amusement moved through the despoiler's throat, too quiet to be laughter. Beyond them, reports fed through the bridge in a constant stream. An inquisitorial kill team had vanished inside the Ark, called Harrow Saint, their last transmission composed of hymns, spoken backward by voices not their own. A naval battle group in the Carthax Reach reported the destruction of an enemy hulk, then transmitted the same report again and again and again, each time with different captains named, different casualty counts, and the same final scream buried beneath the static. A shrine moon had cracked open to reveal a buried engine older than Imperial settlement. The cults of the Archiphane had reached it first. On a hospital ship retreating from the Gathalamor approaches, a sanctioned astropath vomited blood across the lap of a confessor and drew the same sigil in the mess with trembling fingers until his bones broke from the pressure of unseen hands. The priests burned him for witch corruption. The sigil remained after the deck plating was cut away and cast into space. In the strategium pits of Battlefleet Obscurus, officers argued over star charts that no longer agreed with one another. Red pins marked invasions. Black pins marked worlds gone silent. Gold pins marked sites of confirmed loyalist resistance. The map looked less like a war front than a wound crawling with infection. "No pattern," one admiral whispered. An old Chartist captain beside him, his uniform collar stiff with dried blood from a burst eardrum, stared at the pins until his augmetic eye whirred itself hot. "There is always a pattern," he said. "We are simply standing too close to the blade to see the hand holding it." In sealed chambers aboard the Rock, the Sons of the Lion heard whispers no astropath had sent. They came through dead vox channels, through reliquary walls, through the dreams of librarians who woke with frost on their armor and the scent of wet leaves in their lungs. Caliban spoke in fragments. Not the world as it had died, not the world as the Imperium remembered it. Something older, deeper, and less forgiving moved beneath the words. Forests where no forests could exist appeared on battlefields across the Dark Imperium. Guardsmen swore that men in ancient armor had walked from between black trees during a night assault and cut down traitor champions before vanishing into mist. A Chaos Lord of the Flawless Host was found kneeling in a chapel he had desecrated, his head severed, his blade arm removed, his warriors butchered with such controlled savagery that even the surviving cultists refused to speak of what they had seen. Wounds in the dead shone faintly with a cold, fading light. A raven-wing outrider, bleeding out beneath the wreck of his bike on a nameless moon, heard a voice through a Vox unit that had been shattered by bolter fire. "Hold fast, son of the First." When his brothers found him, he was alive among a ring of dead traitors, and the ash around him was patterned with the prints of great beasts. Azrael received the reports in silence. Among the unforgiven, silence could be prayer, condemnation, grief, or command. His warriors knew not to ask which. Far away, in the belly of the vengeful spirit, another signal arrived. It did not come through the sanctioned channels of command. It came as a roar through the warp, as a pressure change in the souls of every butcher, berserker, and blood-sworn killer aboard the ship. Khorne's servants fell to their knees or began killing whoever stood nearest. Chains snapped in fighting pits. Brass icons bled. The ship's own ancient bones seemed to remember a war before the Imperium had become a corpse empire. A warpsmith with no lower jaw received the translation through a screaming auger engine and crawled to the strategium with the message burning across the lenses implanted in his face. He bowed until his iron spine cracked. "Warmaster, the Red Angel is in the Materium." The bridge changed without moving. Even the demons bound in the walls quieted. Abaddon turned from Vashtor's orbiting fragments. "Where?" "His fleet courses toward the Malak system, toward Malak Bael, toward the psychic engine the corpse worshippers have raised there." "The choral engine," Vashtor said softly. The name rippled across nearby cogitators. Several burst into flame. Abaddon looked into the hololith. The projection shifted, stars bending as the course was plotted. Angron's path was not a line of strategy. It was a wound torn open across the void, marked by dead ships, broken worlds, and the red haze of demonic translation. Some among the bridge crew smiled, because they were fools and thought rage was victory. Abaddon did not smile. He had known Primarchs. He had fought beneath them, hated beside them, rebelled with them, and watched them become legends, corpses, monsters, and warnings. Angron was no general in the way Horus had been, no architect of conquest, no master of hidden knives. Angron was a catastrophe in chains. He could not be reasoned with. He could scarcely be directed. Yet a falling moon did not need discipline to destroy a city. It only needed gravity and the correct point of impact. "Can the beast be turned?" asked one of the Ezekarian. Abaddon's gaze did not leave the projection. "No," he said, "but he can be placed where turning does not matter." Vashtor watched the red path crawl toward Malak Bael, his furnace heart brightened by the smallest degree. Around him, the key fragments rotated faster, as though some distant lock had felt the first suggestion of the instrument that would violate it. "The choral engine wounds the warp by existing," Vashtor said. "It sings against the red current. It offends the blood god. It will draw him as surely as exposed flesh draws a hook." "And when Angron reaches it?" Abaddon asked, though he already understood enough of the answer to despise it. "Then the Imperium will witness devotion translated into consequence." The despoiler considered the burning worlds, the dead fleets, the fragments gathered by slaughter and deception, the imperial victories already made meaningless by what they had failed to prevent. He considered the sons of the lion stirring in their stone fortress, the rumors moving through the dark, the impossible forests, the dead traitors cut by a blade not yet named in any current war council. The galaxy bled. Every drop fed something. "Let him run," Abaddon said. Vashtor inclined his head, a gesture too precise to be respect and too deliberate to be mockery. Upon the hololithic display, Angron's course burned brighter, a red wound racing toward Malakbael and the choral engine's doomed light. "Rage is crude," Vashtor said, his voice almost tender with calculation. "But properly harnessed, even rage can open a door." The Conqueror was not a ship. It had been built as one, in an age when the Imperium still believed its own lies about destiny. Its bones were adamantium, its heart was plasma, its hide was layered in void shield arrays, armor belts, weapon shrines, launch bays, and cathedral towers of black iron. It had crossed the stars in the Great Crusade as the flagship of the 12th Legion, bearing warriors who once knew order, brotherhood, and command. Those days were dead. Now the Conqueror was a slaughterhouse with engines. Blood ran through the deck channels where coolant should have flowed. Sacrificial runoff spilled from the upper chapels and drained through brass grates, carrying clots, teeth, strips of skin, and the pulped remains of men offered to the blood god before translation. Chain hooks swung from the vaulted ceilings of the butcher decks, their points sunk into bodies that still twitched, because death aboard the Conqueror was often too slow to be merciful. The walls were plated in trophies, skulls nailed through the brow, helmets ripped from loyalist dead, dreadnought sarcophagus plates hacked apart and mounted like devotional icons. In the deeper holds, slaves worked until their muscles tore from bone, hauling ammunition, dragging corpses, feeding furnaces, and chanting prayers they did not understand because silence invited attention. Attention was death. World Eaters fought in the corridors because stillness was agony. They slammed into one another in ceramite and brass, chain axes shrieking, bare fists cracking helms, teeth biting through armor seals where blades failed to find purchase. Some dueled until one warrior fell. Others fought until both were ruins, laughing through shattered vox grills as their blood steamed across the deck. Apothecaries no longer came to save them. Warpsmiths dragged away what could be used. The rest was meat for the altars. A warrior in crimson plate drove his chain blade into the throat of a brother and ripped upward until helm, jaw, spine, and brain matter burst apart in a wet fan across the bulkhead. He had not been challenged. There had been no insult. He had simply heard the nails bite deeper and needed something alive to stop being alive. Further down the passage, another legionary beat his face against a sealed hatch until the ceramite of his helm cracked and the metal door bent inward. "Open!" he snarled. "Open! Open! Open!" The hatch had not been locked. No one told him. The entire vessel shuddered, not from impact, not from translation sickness, not from the recoil of its guns, from him. Angron passed through the artery halls of his flagship, and the Conqueror remembered fear. Bulkheads flexed inward as he moved, as though the ship itself tried to shrink from his presence. Chains snapped free of their mountings and whipped at the air. Brass icons rattled against stone altars. The lumen strips flickered red, then black, then red again. Mortal crewmen pressed themselves flat to the deck, not in worship, not even in obedience, but because their bodies knew what their minds could not survive knowing. Several died anyway. One bondsman burst apart at the mouth and eyes when the demon Primarch's shadow crossed him. Another clawed his own throat open before Angron came within 20 paces, choking on the taste of rage that was not his own. World Eaters knelt as he approached. Some did so because fragments of legionary discipline still lived in the deepest rot of them. Some did so because the nails drove worship through pain. Most did so because some ancient animal part of their transhuman flesh remembered that there were monsters above monsters. Angron did not look at them. He was too vast for the corridor, and yet the corridor made room by breaking. His wings dragged sparks from the ceiling vaults. His armor was a ruin of brass, black iron, and old blood, fused into demon flesh that pulsed with furnace heat. Cables and chains vanished into muscle. Butcher's nails crowned his skull, no longer merely implants, but a diadem of torment grown into god-marked meat. His breath came like a forge bellows. Each exhalation carried the stink of hot blood, burned bone, and the warp. Spine grinder hung in one clawed hand, a chain axe built beyond sanity. Its haft was thick as a pillar. Its teeth were the size of sword blades, each one snarling with caged murder, each one stained by tanks, knights, dreadnoughts, and demigods. It did not idle. It growled, low and hungry, tugging toward the nearest pulse of life, as if the weapon itself could smell marrow through armor. In his other hand was Samni Arius, the demon blade, chained to him as if even his own war gear had to be imprisoned lest it turn on creation without permission. The blade's edge was not constant. It shimmered between metal, flame, and an absence so sharp it made the eye reject it. Faces moved beneath its surface, opening mouths with no sound. The sword hated everything, including the hand that held it. The chains binding both weapons to Angron's wrists were not restraints for him. They were warnings to reality. A World Eater champion stepped into his path. His armor was decorated with flayed devotional scrolls, skull chains, and the broken wings of some murdered imperial saint. He carried an executioner's axe in both hands, and his helm lenses burned with the red light of the nails. "Sire," the champion rasped, "command us. Give us the course. Give us the kill order. Give us the first skull." Angron stopped. The corridor died into silence, except for the wet drip of blood from overhead hooks. The champion trembled, not from doubt, from hunger. "Sire," he said again, louder, desperate, "name the offering." Angron leaned down. The heat radiating from him blistered paint from the warrior's armor. His jaws opened around teeth like broken iron. The roar that came from him was not language. It was the sound of every gladiator pit he had ever survived, every betrayal he had ever suffered, every brother he had ever hated, every master he had ever failed to kill, every chain that had ever touched him, all crushed into one detonation of wrath. The champion's helm speakers burst inward. His lenses exploded. Blood sprayed from the joints of his gorget. He staggered backward, laughing and screaming at once, hands clawing at the sides of his helmet as the nails inside his skull answered their father's fury. "Blood!" he shrieked. "Blood! Blood! Blood!" He turned and sprinted down the corridor, striking down two of his own brothers before hurling himself into a boarding torpedo bay and sealing himself inside with a pack of berserkers who followed because the roar had become the only order they needed. Angron moved on. Command, aboard the Conqueror, was a fiction maintained by lesser beings. The fleet followed because he moved. The warships of the World Eaters tore through the void around the flagship in formations that no sane admiral would call formations at all. Some vessels accelerated too quickly, their plasma drives burning beyond tolerance as they lunged ahead like starving hounds. Others fell behind to finish crippled prey, ignoring recall signals, their captains lost to boarding frenzies that consumed entire decks. Escorts rammed when they should have screened. Cruisers fired through friendly hulls to strike at targets that had offended them by existing. Vox channels carried no coordinated battle cant, only snarled kill claims, devotional howls, and the grinding static of the nails transmitted through 1,000 helms. A disciplined fleet would have recoiled from such disorder. The World Eaters called it momentum. Ahead, the Malak system burned with Imperial resistance. The defenders had not been idle. The Imperial Navy had arranged its task forces in layered void defense. Grand cruisers and battleships anchored the inner line. Lunar-class cruisers and Gothic-class warships formed lance corridors. Escorts swept ahead in fast attack packs, laying mine screens and false Auspex ghosts. Torpedo destroyers waited behind the larger hulls, engines cold, ready to punish any enemy vessel that overextended. Attack craft launched in ordered wings, Thunderbolt squadrons and Fury interceptors screaming from carrier decks beneath the benedictions of flight priests. Space Marine strike cruisers held near the system's strategic nodes, their prows turned toward the oncoming Crimson Storm. Their captains watched the World Eaters advance with the cold contempt of warriors facing a foe that had surrendered discipline for appetite. Elsewhere, sealed in warded chambers lit by silver flame and hexagrammic script, Grey Knights prepared for the truth beneath the fleet action. They checked Nemesis weapons. They recited names that were chains. They did not speak Angron's name lightly. At the heart of the defensive web, Malak Bael shone. The coral engine burned upon it like a wound of white fire in the warp. Angron felt it before the Conqueror's augurs named it. He felt it through his teeth, through the nails, through the meat of his palms around the haft of Spinegrinder and the chained grip of Samniarius. It was not a light to him. It was not an objective. It was not a strategic asset or a psychic beacon aiding Imperial arms. It was pain. It sang where there should have been only screams. It pushed back against the red truth. It pried at the rage inside him with cold fingers. It was a false star, a corpse bright insult, a hymn raised by slaves and weaklings and armored hypocrites who believed sound could deny blood. Angron threw back his head and roared. Across the fleet, World Eaters answered. Ships surged from the warp stained dark, like predators smelling an opened vein. The Imperial outer line fired first. Torpedoes launched in glittering waves, each warhead a cathedral of explosive wrath, machine spirits locked on target by chanting crews. The void filled with contrails, countermeasure bursts, chaff clouds, and the flaring deaths of interceptors. Lance strikes speared across the distance in silent lines of blue-white killing light. Macro shells, each larger than hab blocks, tumbled through the void and detonated against the leading berserker hulls. Void shields collapsed in sheets of blue fire. A World Eater's cruiser took 3 lance strikes through its prow and kept coming. Its armored beak split open, exposing decks where warriors were still fighting one another amid flame and decompression. It rammed an Imperial escort amidships, driving through it in a storm of metal and venting bodies. The 2 vessels spun locked together while boarding claws punched outward from the traitor hull, spilling berserkers into the dying ship before atmosphere had even finished boiling away. Another traitor destroyer broke formation to chase a crippled Imperial frigate, ignoring 3 recall demands and 2 collision warnings. The frigate's captain used the mistake. He cut engine output, rolled his vessel hard, and exposed the destroyer to the waiting guns of a Navy cruiser. The traitor ship vanished under a disciplined broadside, its reactor dying in a white flash that turned its own boarding parties into ash before they reached their prey. "For the throne, hold formation," said Admiral Corvin Halbrecht from the command throne of the battlecruiser Resolute Blade. His voice was raw from recycled air and smoke, but it did not shake. "They are beasts. Let them spend themselves like beasts. Second line, prepare torpedo release. Lance decks, target overextended hulls. Void masters, rotate shields by squadron pattern. Do not chase. Do not answer their rage. Kill what enters the net." His officers obeyed. Men moved with terror in their bellies and training in their bones. Damage reports poured in. A frigate gutted. 2 escort squadrons gone. Carrier wing losses mounting. Boarding contacts on the light cruiser St. Veridus. But the line held. The World Eaters were brave beyond sanity and savage beyond reason, but their lack of coordination bled them. One berserker Grand Cruiser lunged too far ahead of the Conqueror, engines flaring like a dying star. Imperial torpedoes struck its port side in sequence, not as a scattered barrage, but as a calculated execution. The first wave stripped shields. The second ruptured armor. The third entered the wound and detonated in the ammunition vaults. The cruiser's spine broke. It split open from prow to stern, spilling bodies, tanks, chain weapons, altar brass, and burning atmosphere into the void. On the Resolute Blade, the tactical hololith showed red icons blinking out. Halbrecht allowed himself no smile. "Continue," he said. "Punish the gaps. They have strength, not order. We will make their rage a corridor of death." For a moment, the Imperium seemed to remember how to survive. Then the Conqueror came forward. It did not accelerate like a vessel under command. It lunged. Its engines burned with obscene force, tearing a path through debris, wreckage, and its own escorts. One World Eater's frigate failed to clear its path in time. The Conqueror struck it aside without slowing, breaking the smaller ship's keel and leaving it tumbling in pieces. Its macro batteries fired at extreme range, not in careful salvo patterns, but in thunderous declarations. Shells smashed into the Imperial line. Void shields buckled. A Lunar-class cruiser vanished behind a wall of detonation light and emerged crippled, its prow cathedral sheared away, its forward gun decks open to space. "Concentrate fire on the flagship," Halbrecht ordered. "All lance decks, all torpedo reserves, bring it down." Every loyalist ship with line of sight obeyed. The Conqueror disappeared beneath light. Lances struck its void shields again and again, hammering them into incandescent collapse. Torpedoes burst against its armored flanks. Attack craft screamed low over its hull, firing missiles into weapon shrines and defense towers. Boarding torpedoes launched from Space Marine strike cruisers, streaking toward its hide like judgment given form. The flagship endured. Its shields died. Its armor burned. Towers collapsed. Entire decks vented corpses and fire. Still it came. Deep in its forward assault chambers, ancient mechanisms awakened with a sound like mountains being dragged across bone. The Ursa's claws fired. Titanic harpoons screamed from the Conqueror's prow, trailing chains thick as hab towers. They crossed the void in a blur of brutal momentum and struck the Resolute blade and its nearest escorting cruiser. The first claw punched through the battle cruiser's armored prow, through chapel decks, gun crews, bulkheads, and command arteries, burying itself deep inside the ship's structure. The second tore into the escort cruiser's flank and ripped outward, spilling atmosphere, men, and molten machinery into space. "Cut those chains," Halbrecht shouted. "All batteries, fire on the chains." But the chains tightened. The Conqueror dragged itself closer through the storm of Imperial fire. On its outer hull, a gate opened. For an instant, the void gazed into the butcher heart of the flagship. Red light poured from within. World Eaters roared in ranks that immediately broke as they hurled themselves toward launch bays, boarding tubes, and gunship cradles. Priests of Khorne split their own palms and painted skull runes across the deck. Warpsmiths screamed Binharic litanies to awaken murder engines. Mortal slaves died in heaps beneath armored boots. Angron stood at the threshold. The void should have taken him. It should have frozen his blood, shattered his lungs, locked his muscles, and cast him tumbling as a corpse god's refuse between stars. Instead, the void recoiled. Spinegrinder roared in his grip. Samniarius burned black. The choral engine's song lanced across the system and stabbed into him again. Bright, pure, hateful, unbearable. Angron answered with motion. He launched himself from the Conqueror into open space. For one heartbeat, every Auspex spirit in the Imperial line failed to understand what it saw. A demon Primarch crossed the void like a meteor made of wrath, trailing bloodfire, broken chains, and the pressure wave of a god's contempt. Lance beams caught him and burst against demon flesh. Flak detonations tore chunks from his wings. Macro fragments struck and spun away glowing. His body burned, split, healed, and burned again. He did not slow. Admiral Halbrecht watched the red icon racing across the hololith toward his ship. The bridge crew fell silent. "Emperor, preserve us," one officer whispered. Halbrecht drew his sidearm, though there was nothing in the galaxy more useless than a pistol in the face of what was coming. "No," he said. "Emperor, judge us." Angron struck the Resolute blade like the end of a world. The battle ceased to be naval doctrine. It became mythic murder. Angron crossed the killing dark, and the killing dark failed to kill him. Every gun that could bear upon the Red Angel fired. Lance beams carved through him in spears of sun-bright force, burning trenches across demon flesh, slicing ragged holes through wings broad enough to shadow hab blocks. Macro shells detonated near him and against him, each blast large enough to gut a city district, each impact shedding chunks of red meat, brass plate, and blackened bone into the void. Torpedoes burst in layered fury. Flak storms ripped around him, filling the emptiness with metal shards and burning promethium mist. Attack craft died by the squadron as they screamed too close to the thing their pilots had been ordered to slow. Angron did not slow. Where lance fire opened him, red lightning stitched him closed. Where macro detonations tore away flesh, more flesh fell back into place in ropes and slabs, steaming as if dragged from a butcher's furnace. A shell struck him square in the chest and caved armor inward, shattering ribs that were no longer wholly bone. For the space of a breath, his heart fires showed through the wound, beating like molten iron behind a cage of torn muscle. Then the wound closed with a wet convulsion, and Angron's roar rolled soundlessly across the void, heard by no ears, and yet felt by every soul watching him approach. A Primarch had been made to stand beyond mortal war. A demon Primarch had been made to mock it. The Imperial defenders answered with the full grammar of void command. Battleships converged in ordered burn patterns, presenting armored prows and overlapping void shield arcs. Frigates cut hard through debris fields to recover wounded escorts and screen heavier vessels from boarding torpedoes. Cruisers fired disciplined broadsides rather than panicked volleys, their gunnery crews chanting firing prayers while recoil thunder shook blood from ruptured noses and split lips. Space Marine strike cruisers advanced into the maelstrom with cold intent, launching boarding claws and teleport beacons at World Eaters' hulls already wounded by Navy fire. Thunderhawks burned through clouds of wreckage, engines howling, hulls pitted by shrapnel and void ice. Upon every deck, men did what they had been trained to do. They sealed compartments, they rerouted power, they dragged ammunition by hand when loading hoists failed, they shot boarders in kill corridors, they prayed over broken Auspex arrays, they executed crew who broke and ran. They bled and worked and died beneath banners stitched with oaths to the master of mankind. Their professionalism should have mattered. It did matter against ships. It mattered against warriors. It mattered against the insane fleet tactics of the World Eaters, who were being isolated and butchered whenever their hunger dragged them too far from mutual support. It did not matter enough against Angron. The Red Angel struck the resolute blade through the forward command decks. He did not breach the ship like a boarding torpedo. He violated it like a meteor with hatred for architecture. Armored hull plating folded around him. Chapel vaults burst inward. Statues of saints became shrapnel, their stone faces pulverized across screaming crewmen. A blast door weighing more than a battle tank tore free from its mag locks and scythed through a security detachment, taking men apart in red halves before embedding itself in the far wall. The primary command deck vanished into smoke, alarms, and ruptured bodies. Admiral Corvin Halbrecht had time to raise his pistol. He did not fire. Angron's landing impact hurled him from the command throne and broke him against the brass rail of the strategium pit. His spine snapped with a sound lost beneath the detonation of collapsing bulkheads. Around him, bridge officers died before commands finished leaving their mouths. One Voxmaster screamed for damage control, then disappeared beneath Angron's descending claw, reduced to meat and broken augmetics that sprayed across the comms altar. A junior lieutenant reached for the shipwide Vox and managed only the first syllable of a prayer before Samniarius passed through him and the console behind him, both splitting apart in warp flame. Spinegrinder woke fully. The chain axe's teeth screamed as Angron swung it through the bridge crew, through servitor banks, through cogitator towers, through armored armsmen firing shotguns and las carbines into the furnace of his chest. Men became fragments, armor became glittering dust, Brains struck the inside of viewports and slid down in dark smears. The bridge shrine to the Emperor took a burst of arterial spray across its golden aquila, and the candles beneath it burned blue for an instant before going out. A naval provost, his face white with terror and discipline, drove a power sword into Angron's thigh. The blade sank deep. Angron looked down. The man tried to pull the weapon free. It would not move. Angron lifted one foot and stepped on him. There was no flourish, no acknowledgement, no hatred worthy of the act. The provost burst under the pressure of that tread, bone and organs spreading across the deck in a flattened ruin. Angron did not notice. He was already moving toward the next wall, toward the ship's spine, toward the burning song beyond it all. The choral engine called to him. Far below the killing sky, within the fortified sanctum of Malak Bael, the engine sang. Its chamber had been built as a cathedral to controlled impossibility. Silver pylons rose into darkness, each inscribed with hexagrammic scripture and machine cant. Choir galleries circled the central pit in stacked tiers, every level filled with sanctioned psychers bound into restraint thrones. Their skulls were crowned with conductor spikes. Their mouths were held open by brass and ivory frames. Their eyes were covered in purity seals, many already soaked through with blood. Cables ran from their spines into the engine's heart, where a sphere of white psychic radiance turned within rings of adamantium, crystal, and relic bone. Tech adepts moved along gantries, their robes heavy with warding script. They disabled fail-safes under inquisitorial command, removing one restraint after another because the battle above was worsening and the engine had to sing louder. Output must increase, said Inquisitor Lord Mornack from the observation dais. His armor was black, his face gaunt, his eyes bright with a certainty that had damned better men. The beacon holds the line. The Emperor's light burns them. Raise the chorus. Amagos turned a lens toward him. Its voice clicked through 3 throats, 2 organic and 1 brass. Sacrificial degradation will exceed stable tolerances. The system falls if the engine falters. Containment failure remains within projected catastrophic bands. Mornack's expression did not change. Then project new bands. The Magos bowed because the cult Mechanicus understood arrogance when clothed as necessity and called it command. The psychers screamed harder. Their voices did not sound human anymore. They became a single rising chord that cracked teeth in the mouths of nearby soldiers. Several guardsmen stationed along the lower galleries fell to their knees, bleeding from the ears. One began to laugh. Another whispered that the light had eyes. A third pressed his rifle barrel under his chin and fired before his sergeant could stop him. The choral engine flared. Across the system, lesser demons burned. Bloodletters clawing through boarding breaches burst apart in sprays of boiling ichor. Warp beasts dissolved mid-leap. Possessed world eaters stumbled, their demonic parasites shrieking under the pressure of the psychic hymn. On the hull of the resolute blade, where Angron had torn his path inward, red lightning guttered around him, and several wounds opened again, smoking with banishment fire. He felt pain, not mortal pain, not the crude bite of blades or shells. This was denial. This was the hated pressure of will imposed against him, not by one warrior, not by one sorcerer, but by an engine of chained minds turned into a choir of refusal. Angron howled and tore deeper into the ship. In orbit and upon Malak Bael, those who understood the warp prepared their answer. Brother Captain Drystan Crom stood within a warded assault chamber beneath the Fortress Moon's primary bastion. Around him waited grey knights in silver plate, their armor engraved with litanies that had killed demons by being spoken. Paladins checked storm bolters. Strike brethren tightened gauntlets around Nemesis Force halberds and swords. Incense burned in censers held by servo skulls. The air tasted of iron, sanctified oil, and impending damnation. Crom's helm was off. His face was calm. Scars cut through his scalp, where old psychic feedback had seared him to the bone. In his hands rested a nemesis demon hammer, its head inscribed with true names that would have driven unwarded men insane. A Justicar approached and bowed. "The beast has breached the fleet line. The coral engine holds, but containment is unstable." Crom closed his eyes. "We do not speak of a beast." The chamber fell silent. Crom opened his eyes again, and they shone with cold silver light. "Name the beast, bind the beast, break the beast." His brothers answered as one. "By the Emperor's will." They deployed into hell. Teleportation delivered them not cleanly, but through screaming interference. Grey knights appeared in bursts of silver light across the lower approaches to the coral engine, some arriving already under attack, some materializing amid corpses, some stepping directly into the path of world eaters who had broken through the outer bastions in pursuit of slaughter. The first wave of berserkers slammed into them with chain axes shrieking. The Grey Knights did not give ground. Storm bolters hammered. Psybolt rounds punched through crimson armor and detonated inside transhuman bodies. Nemesis blades flared and cut apart warriors whose souls were already half-chained to rage. A World Eater champion leapt at Crom with both axes raised, roaring a skull oath through a helm crusted with old faces. Crom struck him in the chest with the demon hammer and turned his torso into a crater of shattered ceramite, cooked organs, and broken ribs. The warrior flew backward and killed 2 of his own in the impact. Then the demons came. Bloodthirsters descended through ruptures in the upper vaults, their wings setting banners aflame, their axes burning with the hunger of Khorne's throne. Lesser demons poured around their hooves in a tide of blades and horns. The choral engine's song struck them like winter sunlight. Many burst apart before touching the floor. Others fought through it, diminished but not destroyed, and crashed against the Grey Knight line with all the hate of the warp behind them. The chamber became apocalypse contained by walls. Paladins met bloodthirsters beneath the choir galleries. Nemesis force weapons clashed against axes made from murder and old brass. Silver wards flared. Red lightning answered. Psychers in restraint thrones died by the dozens as feedback turned their minds into burning glass. Their screams fed the engine fed the blast. The blast scoured demons from reality and tore open new wounds through which more came shrieking. For a moment, hope existed. It was a terrible, narrow thing, built from sacrifice and arrogance and the courage of warriors who had walked into damnation with their names already offered to the Emperor. Angron had been wounded. The World Eaters had slowed. Lesser demons were being erased. The choral engine blazed brighter than ever. Brother Captain Crom and his paladins forced a path toward the central sanctum, every step bought in blood and banishment. Then Angron arrived. He did not enter through the gate. He came through the wall. Adamantium, ferrocrete, warding script, and armored defenders exploded inward as the Red Angel breached the chamber from below, dragging fire, ship debris, and mangled bodies in his wake. Half a squad of stormtroopers vanished beneath the debris wave. A Grey Knight turned and fired into Angron's face until his storm bolter clicked dry. Angron's backhand struck him and scattered him across the floor in pieces of silver armor and red ruin. The choral engine screamed at him. White light struck Angron full in the chest. It burned away flesh in sheets. It exposed ribs, organs, and demon fire. It seared the runes on his armor and made the chains on his wrists glow red hot. Blood letters near him evaporated. A bloodthirster stumbled back, roaring as its wings burned to smoke. Angron staggered. The chamber saw it. Every gun turned. Every Grey Knight focused his will. Every choir voice was driven beyond endurance. The psychic shockwave crashed into the Red Angel again, and this time one of his wings tore apart in a storm of ash and meat. His left arm blackened to the bone. Samniarius flickered. Spinegrinder's roar broke into a grinding stutter. Brother Captain Crom advanced. "Name the beast," he said. His brothers answered, voices iron beneath the psychic storm. Angron, bind the beast. The wards blazed. Silver chains of force erupted from the floor, from the pylons, from the burning air itself. They wrapped Angron's limbs, throat, wings, and weapons. He strained against them, muscles tearing, demon flesh splitting, blood rising from him in hot sheets. "Break the beast," Crom said. He charged. The demon hammer struck Angron in the side of the skull. The blow rang through the chamber like a bell large enough to wake the dead. Angron's head snapped sideways. Horn cracked. Flesh burst. A gout of black-red blood sprayed across Crom's armor and hissed on the wards. The Red Angel dropped to one knee. Courage mattered. Skill mattered. Faith mattered. They simply did not always matter enough. Angron's hand closed around the psychic chains binding Spinegrinder. He pulled. The wards howled. Grey Knights died as the backlash burst their hearts inside their armor. Psykers screamed themselves empty. The chains broke. Spinegrinder rose. Crom swung again. Angron was faster. The chain axe came down in a single catastrophic arc. It caught Brother Captain Drystand Crom at the shoulder and tore through him to the opposite hip. Silver armor, sanctified bone, organs, and the sacred machinery of his plate erupted beneath the screaming teeth. The demon hammer fell from hands that were no longer connected to a living warrior. Crom's body separated in a red and silver ruin, his blood striking the floor in a fan-shaped offering. The Grey Knights did not cry out. They attacked. Angron went through them. He broke paladins with his claws. He kicked one into a pylon hard enough to collapse the structure and send an entire choir tier crashing down in a rain of psykers, restraints, and snapped cables. Samniarius carved 3 warriors apart in one swing, their souls flaring bright before being dragged into the blade's hungry dark. Spinegrinder took heads, torsos, arms, and weapons, making no distinction between flesh and relic plate. He reached the choral engine. Inquisitor Lord Mornack stood before it, pistol in one hand, rosette in the other, his face lit by the white sun he had believed was salvation. "By the authority of the Holy Ordos," he began. Angron struck him aside without looking. The Inquisitor hit the engine housing hard enough to become a dark smear across its sanctified surface. Angron raised Spinegrinder. For an instant, the choral engine's light filled the chamber, and within that light was every chained mind, every command, every prayer, every desperate assumption that mankind could build a holy weapon and aim it safely into hell. Then the Red Angel brought the chain axe down. Khorne answered. The impact did not destroy the engine as matter alone. It opened it. It turned the song inside out. White radiance became red. Choir voices became a single wet howl. The rings around the engine spun apart, dragging gantries, pylons, psykers, tech adepts, soldiers, Grey Knights, demons, and broken machinery into an expanding storm of crimson force. The warp flooded through the wound Angron had made, not as subtle corruption, not as temptation, not as whispered promise, but as rage given pressure, rage given law, rage given command. Malakbael broke. Its crust split beneath the fortress complexes. Hive bastions toppled into chasms glowing red from beneath. Orbital defense platforms fired upon one another. Ships in high anchor turned their guns on allies. Astropaths burst into flame. Priests tore out their own tongues and tried to carve skull runes into altar stone with their teeth. Guardsmen in trenches stopped firing at traitors and looked at the men beside them with sudden, absolute hatred. The murder curse spread through the system like a second detonation. On the bridge of a Navy cruiser, ratings beat their officers to death with loading hooks. In an engine shrine, tech priests ripped sacred cabling from the walls and strangled one another with it, while chanting in broken Binharic fury. A Space Marine sergeant ordered his squad to hold formation, then felt his heart's hammer in wrong rhythm as his battle brothers turned their bolters toward him. In the void, Imperial ships that had stood together moments before opened fire at point-blank range, their captains screaming kill orders that made no tactical sense, and all the sense in the galaxy to the blood singing inside their skulls. World Eaters howled in triumph. Angron stood amid the ruined heart of the Choral engine, burning, wounded, laughing without joy. Around him, reality ran red. The Imperium had believed it stood beside a beacon. It had stood beside a bomb wired into the warp. Across Malak, loyal men ceased to be loyal. Brave men ceased to be brave. Disciplined warriors forgot the shape of duty. Vox channels filled with roaring, sobbing, wet impact, bolter fire, chain teeth, and prayers collapsing into animal noise. The dead were the fortunate. Madness had a sound in the Malak system. It was the wet chop of chain blades through loyal flesh, the shriek of Vox channels drowning in murder orders, the thunder of Imperial guns turned inward against Imperial hulls. It was Angron's laughter bleeding through the warp, red and vast and mindless, as discipline became appetite, and the Emperor's servants butchered one another beneath a sky split open by rage. Far from that crimson ruin, silence held dominion. The rock drifted through the void like the last surviving bone of a murdered world. It was not merely a fortress monastery. It was a continent of black stone and armored bastions, a relic of Caliban torn from death and chained to engines that growled with ancient purpose. Its battlements rose into vacuum like the crowns of dead kings. Lance batteries slept behind armored shutters. Hangars yawned in its flanks, each one capable of birthing squadrons of gunships into war. Cathedrals, reliquary vaults, crypts, prison halls, librarius, sanctums, strategium chambers, and forbidden engines lay layered within it, stacked one upon another like secrets buried under stone. The rock did not echo as other vessels echoed. Sound went there to be judged. In its upper halls, black armored sentries stood motionless beneath lumen strips, dimmed to funeral gold. Robes of bone-white cloth hung over their plate. Bolters rested against their chests. Their helms turned only when required, and even then, with the measured economy of executioners. Chapter serfs moved between them with lowered eyes and sealed mouths, carrying data slates, weapon reliquaries, sensor chains, and bundles of parchment marked with oaths that would never be recorded by the administratum. Servo skulls drifted through incense haze, their tiny suspensors whining like trapped insects. Beneath the halls of worship lay deeper places, vaults no pilgrim would see, doors without markings, corridors where the names of the dead were not carved, because to carve them would be to admit they had existed, cells that held no prisoners until they did, interrogation chapels where the stone was scrubbed clean after every confession and never became clean, armories containing weapons from wars the wider Imperium had forgotten, and weapons from sins the Dark Angels refused to forget. There were secrets in the rock older than most Imperial worlds. Azrael carried many of them. The Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels stood within the strategium known among the Inner Circle as the Chamber of Broken Stars. Above him, a hololithic projection of the galaxy turned in slow torment. The great rift cut across it like a blade wound. Imperial systems flickered in distress, amber and death red. Void paths twisted through storm banks. Reports from the Arcs of Omen campaign crawled in columns of cold light, each one incomplete, each one stained by loss. Worlds fallen, fleets broken, relics stolen, kill teams missing, shrines gutted, warp signatures multiplying around impossible trajectories. Azrael watched without movement. His armor was the green of old forests, remembered by warriors who had never walked beneath living branches. The lion helm rested nearby beneath watchful guard. The sword of secrets hung at his side. A robe concealed some of his plate, but not the weight of command. Nothing in him suggested haste. Nothing in him suggested uncertainty. Yet around him stood masters of the unforgiven, who had seen him lead through disaster and knew that stillness was not calm. It was containment. Vashtor's war was not random. That truth sat in the chamber like a drawn blade. The Archiphane had already touched the rock. His assault had not been merely an attack upon stone, guns, and gene-wrought defenders. It had been a probing of locks, a measuring of hidden doors. He had sought what should have remained buried within the fortress monastery's most secret wound, reaching for forbidden mechanisms and ancient engines bound to the doom of Caliban. The Tuchulcha engine's name was not spoken openly, even here, among those permitted to know enough to be damned by knowledge. Its significance did not require explanation. The silence around it did that work. Vashtor had reached into the rock and withdrawn his hand with purpose still intact. Azrael knew what that meant. An enemy who struck a fortress might be repelled. An enemy who understood why the fortress mattered could not be dismissed as defeated. "Report," Azrael said. The word was quiet. It filled the chamber. Master Lazarus inclined his head. Grand Masters of successor chapters stood nearby, their heraldry different, their shame the same. Angels of absolution, angels of vengeance, consecrators, guardians of the covenant, others besides, each bound to the unforgiven by oaths, layered beneath official loyalty, each chapter a blade in the same hidden hand. "The mustering continues," Lazarus said. "Raven-wing elements are at full readiness. Deathwing teleportariums are sanctified and awaiting target resolution. Strike cruisers from the successor chapters have entered formation around the rock. Fleet assets report ammunition stocks sufficient for sustained void engagement, though several vessels still bear wounds from the Archiphane's prior assault. Wounds are irrelevant unless they bleed weakness," Azrael said. "No weakness has been reported. Then none will be tolerated." No one mistook the statement for rhetoric. The unforgiven did not gather like a crusade. There were no roaring sermons to inspire mortal masses, no banners waved for the comfort of crowds, no boastful declarations broadcast across open Vox. Their assembly was colder than that. Battle barges took position in silent geometric layers. Strike cruisers formed kill boxes around predicted translation lanes. Escort squadrons accepted firing solutions without chatter. Armorium crews loaded plasma coils, melter charges, cyclone missile racks, stormbolter magazines, and ancient relic rounds blessed by chaplains whose voices did not rise above murmurs. Dreadnought sarcophagi were awakened with incense and oath cant, their occupants greeting the coming war with the grave patience of warriors already entombed. Reconnaissance first, always. Raven-wing craft launched from the rock's shadow, black against black, engines cold-shielded, augers masked. Outriders, land speeders, storm talon escorts, and dark shrouds vanished into the void in staggered departures. They did not seek glory, they sought truth. Truth, among the dark angels, was more dangerous than enemy fire, and therefore had to be captured before it escaped. The Deathwing waited. Bone-white Terminators stood in teleportation vaults beneath hanging sensors, their armor heavy with purity seals, campaign scars, and the grave dignity of warriors trusted with the chapter's innermost violence. Knights of the inner circle rested hands upon maces and swords. Storm shields bore marks from claws, axes, demon fire, and battles that would never be entered into public record. They did not pace. They did not sharpen blades already sharp enough to cut fate. They waited for the breach, because the Deathwing was not a spear cast in anger. It was a tomb door opened at the correct moment. Azrael looked upon the assembled icons in the hololith and saw not strength, but cost. Every vessel committed risked secrets. Every successor summoned widened the circle of those who might witness what Vashtor sought. Every answer required another seal broken within the mind. Since Caliban, the unforgiven had lived with the blade turned inward. Their loyalty was absolute, but it was not innocent. Their discipline was not purity. It was restraint, built around a wound. The World Eaters spent rage like ammunition. The Sons of the Lion locked theirs away and called it duty until the hour came to unsheath it. Ezekiel entered without announcement. The chief librarian moved with the measured tread of one who listened to voices beneath the world. His psychic hood was dark around his skull. His eyes held a cold blue radiance, not bright enough to comfort and far too old to dismiss. Behind him came other librarians of the chapter, robed, helmed, silent. Frost clung to the lower edges of their robes, though the chamber's temperature had not changed. Azrael turned to him. "What have you seen?" Ezekiel did not answer at once. That alone tightened the silence. "The skein knots around the somnium stars," he said, "not as a noose, as a hinge." Several masters shifted. Armor joints whispered. No warrior spoke. Ezekiel continued. "The Archiphane's pattern bends there. His engines grind through paths that are not paths. We have traced echoes through warp storms and dead astropathic choirs. The arcs move as teeth in a greater mechanism. The fragments are not trophies. They are components." "We know this," said a successor chapter master, voice hard behind his grill. "Tell us what we do not know." Ezekiel looked at him. The helm lenses of the other master lowered a fraction. "Caliban answers." The word entered the chamber and changed it. No one recoiled. No one cried out. No one cursed. The Dark Angels had mastered themselves better than that. Yet the silence after the name was colder than before. Veterans of the inner circle looked not at one another, but through one another, each seeing ashes, forests, betrayal, falling stone, and the impossible fracture of a homeworld that had died but never released them. Caliban was not history. It was an open wound kept beneath armor. Azrael's face did not change. "Explain." "Dreams," Ezekiel said. "Vox echoes. Battlefield reports too consistent to dismiss. Forests where no biosphere permits growth. Men in archaic plate emerging from mist. Traitor champions executed by a blade that leaves cold luminescence in the wound. A raven-wing outrider heard a command through a broken vox while surrounded by dead heretics. The voice called him Son of the First." A chaplain standing near the chamber wall tightened his grip upon his crozius. The winged helm turned slightly toward Ezekiel. "Deception," the chaplain said. "The warp is an abyss of masks." "Yes," Ezekiel replied, "and yet some masks are worn by truths too terrible to face unhelmed." Azrael studied the galaxy map. The somnium stars pulsed in the hololith. Around them, red threat icons multiplied. "A shadowed king walks through impossible woods," Ezekiel said, lower now. "I have seen him in dreams I did not invite. I have seen beasts kneel in dark trees. I have seen a sword drawn beneath a dead green sun. I have heard something beneath the stone of the rock answer his footfall." The chamber held its breath. Azrael did not ask the question many of them carried like a blade behind the teeth. Hope was dangerous. Hope made fools reach for untested doors. Hope had ruined worlds. He asked instead, "Can this be trusted?" "No," Ezekiel said. "Can it be ignored?" "No." Azrael accepted both answers. They were the only answers worthy of the chamber. A serf entered and knelt at the edge of the strategium dais, trembling beneath the gaze of transhuman lords. He held up a sealed data cylinder with both hands. A raven-wing sigil glowed upon its surface. Azrael extended one gauntlet. The serf placed the cylinder there and bowed until his forehead touched the floor. The report opened in the hololith. Static unfolded first, then fragmented picked captures, then a stabilizing tactical image. The Idolatros system appeared in grainy resolution, half drowned in warp interference and radiation bloom. Enemy markers filled the display. Too many. A raven-wing scout captain's voice emerged through layers of distortion, controlled but strained. "Supreme Grand Master, reconnaissance confirms massed traitor armadas within Idolatros. Black Legion vessels hold the outer approaches in layered patterns. Cult of the Archiphane assets are embedded throughout, including demon engine constructs of unknown tonnage. Emperor's Children warships are present on the spinward flank. Death Guard hulks occupy the debris reaches and appear to be seeding plague matter through the void. Word-bearers battle groups detected near the inner translation wound. Auspex ghosts suggest additional vessels masked behind warp distortion. The image sharpened. A vast silhouette dominated the far side of the system. It was an ark, its outline jagged and predatory, its hull crawling with weapon towers and corrupt shrines. Its prow resembled a blade driven through a cathedral's heart. The scout captain's voice continued. Primary ambush asset identified. The Ark Netherworld blade waits in concealment along the projected approach vector. Enemy disposition indicates expectation of our arrival. The transmission crackled. Screams bled through the background, then were cut away by disciplined vox filtering. Recommendation: assume trap. Repeat, assume trap. The image died. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of the successor masters said, "They know we are coming." Azrael looked at the dead hololith space where the Netherworld blade had hung. "They know what we must defend," he said. "That is not the same as knowing what we are." He turned from the projection. Every warrior in the chamber straightened by the smallest degree, as if a blade had just been drawn somewhere no mortal eye could see. Ravenwing will continue forward screening. No pursuit beyond assigned Auspex shadow. Deathwing remains sealed until breach coordinates are confirmed. Fleet elements will enter by staggered translation and form layered kill zones around the rock. Successor vessels will deny the flanks. Librarius assets will ward against scrap code, possession vectors, and false Calibanic echoes. No open channels, no unnecessary declarations. No warrior is to answer voices not confirmed by command seal. His gaze moved across them all. If the Netherworld blade is bait, we will cut the line. If Idolatros is a trap, we will enter it armed. If Vashtor has touched the sins of Caliban, then he has chosen a war he does not understand. The chaplain struck the butt of his Crozius once against the stone floor. "We are the unforgiven," he said. The answer came from every helm, every throat, every warrior lord in the chamber. It was not shouted. It was worse than shouting. "We remember." Azrael placed his hand upon the hilt of the Sword of Secrets. "Advance." Across the rock, the order passed like a death sentence accepted without appeal. Hangars ignited. Plasma drives woke. Armorium gates opened. Ravenwing scouts vanished deeper into the dark. Deathwing warriors lowered helms over faces that had already become tombs. Battle barges turned their prows toward Idolatros. Strike cruisers aligned in silence. The rock's engines growled beneath the bones of Caliban, and somewhere deep within Forbidden Stone, old mechanisms stirred as if listening. The Unforgiven did not avoid traps. They entered them with blades drawn and names already carved for the dead. The Unforgiven entered Idolatros without heraldry, screamed across open vox, without hymns broadcast to comfort lesser souls, without the gaudy arrogance of warriors who mistook noise for courage. They came in silence. Translation scars opened across the edge of the system, thin wounds of cold light slicing through the dark. One by one, the vessels of the First Legion's bloodline emerged from the immaterium in disciplined formation. Strike cruisers bled warp frost from their prows. Battle barges turned broadside with the patience of execution platforms. Escort squadrons took their places in layered arcs, their plasma drives burning steady and blue-white against the red murk of a system already poisoned by chaos. Successor chapter ships moved among them with differing heraldry upon their hulls, but the same hidden wound beneath their armor. At the center came the rock. It did not translate so much as arrive in judgment. The fortress monastery emerged from the storm like a moon torn from a dead world and clad in guns. Its bastions caught the light of distant stars and gave nothing back. Weapon ports opened along its flanks, vast as city gates. Lance arrays turned with glacial precision. Torpedo shrines awakened. The ancient engines within its stone heart growled through the void, and every warrior of the Unforgiven who felt that vibration through his boots, knew he stood upon the last surviving bone of Caliban. Azrael watched from the strategium without speaking. Before him, Idolatros unfolded in threat runes and augur distortion. The system was a grave with engines still running. Its outer debris belts had been seeded with wreckage, mines, and corpse hulks stripped of transponders. Dead stations drifted in slow rotation, their interiors open to vacuum, their outer skins daubed with sigils that hurt the eye. Radiation clouds masked deeper movements. Warp interference crawled along the edges of every reading like vermin beneath parchment. Then the enemy answered. The Chaos Fleet appeared as a polluted mirror of the unforgiven advance. Where the rock stood as a moon of guns, the Ark Netherworld blade waited like a cathedral dragged through a butcher's dream and sharpened into a weapon. Its prow was a black wedge of fused adamantium, bone, and brass. Towers leaned from its back at wrong angles, crowned by bells that rang in silence across the void. Weapon batteries opened like wounds along its flanks, and the machine spirits within them did not chant firing rites. They chanted hunger. Around it came demon ships with hides of metal and meat, corrupted escorts with prows carved into screaming faces, scrap hulks welded together by dark mechanicum will, and cruisers whose engines burned in colors no loyal plasma reactor should know. Black Legion vessels anchored the outer line, their gun decks disciplined in their own brutal way. Emperor's children's ships moved with predatory grace along the flank, bright and obscene amid the dark. Death Guard hulks wallowed in the debris reaches, venting plague fog into space as though poisoning the void itself. Word-bearers' warships hung near the inner distortion fields, their hull chapels alight with demon flame and scripture older than sanity. The Vox remained sealed. Azrael did not ask whether the enemy was ready. Readiness was written across the system in guns. "Fire pattern Caliban Black," he said. The order passed through command seals, not open speech. The first torpedo salvo left the unforgiven line in perfect sequence. Hundreds of warheads crossed the dark. Their machine spirits fed target prayers and kill coordinates. The Chaos Fleet answered with its own storm, not disciplined in shape, but vast in malice. Torpedoes met torpedoes amid the void and birthed a chain of silent suns. Fighter wings launched from both sides and died almost immediately in clouds of molten debris. Interceptors became streaks of burning metal. Attack craft spun out of control, their pilots cooked inside ruptured cockpits or dragged screaming into the warp by things that clung to their canopies with claws of smoke. Lance exchanges followed. The rock fired, and the system lit. Beams of white-green fury stabbed from its bastions and carved through the outer hull of a corrupted cruiser, slicing through armor decks, slave holds, gun shrines, and engine conduits. The traitor vessel broke in half, both sections still firing as they drifted apart. A battle barge of the Angels of Vengeance unleashed a broadside into a Black Legion line ship and stripped its void shields in sheets of blue flame. Escort squadrons darted through the gaps, launching melter torpedoes into exposed wounds and banking away before return fire could erase them. Return fire came anyway. The Netherworld blade opened its gun shrines. The first barrage struck harder than Auspec's prediction allowed. Shells that should have fallen short curved through the void, correcting their own trajectories with demonic spite. Lance beams split into branching spears and struck multiple targets from impossible angles. An unforgiven frigate raised full shields, received a glancing impact according to every cogitator aboard, and then vanished as its keel folded inward as if crushed by an invisible fist. No distress call came, no final oath, only a bloom of wreckage and the brief flare of souls snuffed out before the ship knew it had been killed. "Scrap code ingress," reported a tech marine from the lower strategium tier. His voice remained level, despite the blood running from the augmetic ports at his temples. "Targeting spirits under assault, cogitator banks bleeding hostile cant, Machine prayers corrupted on decks tertiary through 7th. Quarantine affected spirits, Azrael said. That will blind 3 batteries. Better blind than false. By your will. Across the fleet, some guns went silent rather than risk obedience to enemy lies. Other vessels were not quick enough. A strike cruiser of the Consecrators fired into empty void, then screamed through its own machine cant as its port batteries turned and killed a friendly escort. The escort broke apart under loyal shells, guided by traitor mathematics. Before the corrupted targeting spirit could force another betrayal, the Consecrator's captain ordered his own battery deck purged. Atmosphere vented. Hundreds of serfs and servitors died in an instant of frozen blood and spinning tools. The guns fell silent. The line held. The price rose. Azrael studied the hololith. The netherworld blade dominated the enemy formation too obviously. Its guns were savage, its presence enormous, its threat undeniable. It bled hatred into the augurs. It demanded attention like a beast roaring before a cave mouth. Too loud, too deliberate. They want us fixed here, Azrael said. Lazarus stood nearby, helm under one arm, his scarred face lit by red threat icons. The Ark is bait? The Ark is a blade, Azrael replied, but not the hand. The Supreme Grand Master shifted the hololith with a gauntleted gesture. Behind the netherworld blade, masked by warp distortion, lay deeper gravitational anomalies, faint engine ghosts, data inconsistencies, a hollow in the system where too many readings failed for failure to be natural. Vashtor is not there, Azrael said. Then we break the blade and move on, Lazarus said. Azrael nodded once. Ravenwing. The order went out. Samael led the strike himself. He came from the shadow of the rock upon Corvex, the ancient jet bike cutting through the void like a black spear loosed by a dead king. Around him swept Ravenwing squadrons in attack craft, gunships, land speeders, and void-adapted assault craft launched from concealed vectors. They did not charge the Ark, as the World Eaters would have charged. They moved in layered feints, drawing fire, vanishing behind debris, reappearing beneath shield harmonics, weakened by the rock's bombardment. Dark shrouds cast fields of distortion that turned Auspex locks into ghosts. Black knights flew close enough to the Ark's hull to skim the raised spines of its armor. Breach points marked, Samael said. His voice was cold, almost bored. Teleportariums have the wounds, came the answer from the Deathwing command channel. Melter teams, commit. The first boarding charges struck the netherworld blade in 6 places at once. Melter warheads bloomed against its hull, burning through armor layered with bone plating, demon brass, and shrieking wards. Before the wounds cooled, Ravenwing assault craft fired boarding torpedoes into them. Teleport flares cracked inside the Ark's outer decks, bone-white terminators appearing amid smoke, filth, and screaming cultists. The boarding war began with thunder. Storm bolters pulped the first wave of defenders into red mist and meat fragments. Cultists surged from side chapels carrying chain blades, hooks, autoguns, and severed heads made into icons. They died in heaps before the Deathwing, their bodies torn open by mass reactive fire, their limbs spinning away across floors slick with old sacrifice. A Terminator strode through the remains without slowing, his power fist closing around a screaming priest and crushing him against an altar until ribs, organs, and devotional trinkets burst between armored fingers. Ravenwing followed through the breach points with speed and precision. Samael's blade cut through the first Dark Mechanicum Overseer to raise a weapon against him. The creature had once been human enough to fear death. Now, it was a robed column of augmetics, sore limbs, brass lungs, and exposed nerve cables. It continued chanting after its head came away, Binharic curses spilling from speakers embedded in its chest until a plasma blast cored it open. The corridors of the Ark were wrong. Some were wide enough for tanks and filled with hanging chains bearing half-rendered bodies. Others narrowed without warning, forcing even Astartes to turn sideways, while blades thrust from murder holes in the walls. Pipes pulsed like veins. Data cables twitched like exposed nerves. Servo skulls made from Xeno's crania whispered targeting coordinates to gun servitors fused into the bulkheads. The dark mechanicum fought without mercy and without the useful weakness of pain. Corrupted Skitarii advanced in lockstep, rad carbines hissing, galvanic rifles spitting witchlight. Their limbs jerked under remote impulse. Some continued firing after Stormbolter rounds took off their heads, their bodies guided by spinal receivers and hate-coded command loops. One headless Skitarius walked directly into a Deathwing Knight, clamped both augmetic hands onto the warrior's breastplate, and detonated the reactor wired into its ribcage. The blast threw the knight backward and blackened his armor, but he rose from the crater and crushed the next attacker beneath his boot. "Engine shrine ahead," voxed a Deathwing sergeant. "Destroy it," Samael answered. "No capture, no delay." Melter charges were placed against the first of the Ark's primary engine control altars. The altar was a mountain of black iron, spinning gears, bound machine spirits, and flayed human faces stretched across brass speaking plates. It begged in a dozen voices. It offered coordinates, secrets, the names of fallen, the memory of Caliban beneath green leaves. The Deathwing sergeant listened until the charge runes went amber. Then he said, "We remember enough." The melter charges detonated. The first engine died screaming. The Netherworld blade bucked in space, its aft thrusters guttered. On the outer battlefield, the Ark's formation faltered for the first time. Unforgiven vessels seized the moment. Lances cut into exposed flanks. Torpedoes hammered weakened shields. The rock fired again, and a whole cathedral tower vanished from the Ark's spine in a storm of shattered bells and burning corpses. Inside, the boarding teams advanced. The second engine shrine was guarded by demon engines welded directly into the bulkheads. They had no legs, only torsos of armor and flesh fused into wall sockets, their cannon limbs rotating through arcs of fire, while their mouths screamed binary curses and Cornate butcher words in the same breath. Chain blades met armor in corridors too narrow for clean movement. A Ravenwing warrior lost an arm to a wall-mounted saw and killed the demon engine with a grenade shoved into its exposed throat. A Deathwing Terminator took a cannon shell to the chest, staggered, and kept firing until his Stormbolter jammed with gore from the cultists pressed too close around. Him. He drew a blade and continued in silence. Samael reached the second shrine through a maintenance artery flooded knee-deep with blood oil. Corvex could not pass there. He dismounted without complaint, moving with blade and plasma pistol through steam thick enough to paint his armor wet black. A warpsmith waited at the shrine's core, its body suspended from a spider frame of blades and injector limbs. "Son of the dead forest," the warpsmith hissed, "your locks are known. Your shame is indexed. Your father's shadow turns in the deep." Samael fired once. The plasma shot burned through the warpsmith's torso and detonated the ammunition coils behind it. As the creature thrashed, Samael stepped through the fire and cut away the remaining limbs with exact strokes. "Engine shrine secured," he voxed. "Charges placed," said the accompanying knight. "Withdraw 10 paces." The second engine died harder than the first. Its death scream ran through the Ark's corridors and burst the skulls of nearby slaves. Its shockwave collapsed 3 decks, killing cultists, Skitarii, and 2 squads of Unforgiven, whose names were logged in silence before their life signs vanished. There was no time to mourn. The third engine could not be reached by corridor. The Ark had rearranged itself, sealing routes with walls of bone and moving machinery. Azrael authorized teleport insertion through unstable interference. The Deathwing accepted. Half of the kill team arrived intact. The other half materialized inside walls, engines, and one another. Their deaths were immediate and ugly, but their teleport flares gave the survivors enough light to see the shrine. They attacked before the Ark could understand the wound. Stormbolters thundered. Chain fists bit into power conduits. A librarian spoke a word of unmaking, that turned a bound demon into ash and left blood running from every seal of his armor. Melter fire opened the core. The third engine failed. The netherworld blade began to die. It did not die quietly. Its failing systems lashed outward like a wounded beast. A Nova cannon equivalent buried in its lower hull, fired without target lock, and struck an Angels of Absolution cruiser amidships. The Loyalist vessel broke in two, both halves burning as escape craft tried and failed to clear the debris. A flailing lance array carved across a Dark Angels escort squadron and erased 3 ships in a single sweep. The Ark's ruptured reactor vomited warp flame that became screaming faces large enough to swallow fighters whole. In the Strategium, casualty icons multiplied. Azrael watched them appear. The Netherworld blade had failed in its purpose as a fortress. It had succeeded as a delay. "Boarding forces are withdrawing," Lazarus said. "Samael reports primary engines destroyed, Ark mobility crippled, enemy command structure collapsing. Signal fleet advance." Lazarus looked at the hololith, then back to Azrael. "The Ark still lives. It is no longer the objective." A pause. Then Lazarus bowed his head. "By your will." The order passed through sealed command channels. The unforgiven fleet did not cheer. It did not linger to savor the crippled Ark's death. Battle barges adjusted formation. Strike cruisers recalled surviving assault craft. Escorts cut new paths through debris. The Rock turned its guns away from the burning Netherworld blade and toward the deeper darkness of Idolatros. Behind them, the Ark continued to convulse. Loyalist ships died in its death throes. Thousands of unforgiven serfs, armsmen, pilots, and battle brothers were gone, their bodies scattered through void, flame, and collapsing corridors within a traitor hulk that had never needed to survive. Every Imperial victory cost irreplaceable lives. This one had purchased only motion. Azrael stared into the hollow beyond the Ark, where Vashtor's true signal waited behind layered interference and dead stars. "Onward," he said. The Rock advanced, and the crippled Netherworld blade burned behind it like a warning no one had time to heed. Wormwood waited beyond the corpse light of Idolatros, like a sin-given planetary mass. It was not a world in any sense the Imperium would have accepted. It had no rightful oceans, no true sky, no continents shaped by wind or tectonic patience. It turned beneath storms of warp fire as a vast engine of brass, root, bone, and industrial hatred, its surface plated in corrupted metal and split by forests of dead black trunks that bled oil instead of sap. Mountain ranges had been reforged into gear teeth. Rivers ran as molten slag through channels lined with vertebrae the size of hab towers. Cathedral cities leaned from the curvature of the planet like growths upon diseased flesh, their spires bent inward toward a central wound where demon light pulsed in the rhythm of a furnace heart. It was Caliban, and not Caliban. That was the blasphemy. The dead homeworld of the Dark Angels had not returned as memory, relic, or miracle. It had been violated. Its remnants had been gathered, fused, corrupted, and driven into motion by the Archiphane's will. Ancient stone that should have slept in silence had been riveted to demon engines. Roots from forests that existed only in the wounds of history curled through Manufactoria towers. Broken planetary crust had been banded in chains large enough to tether moons. Vast pistons drove into mountain flesh and withdrew slick with magma and blood. Wormwood did not orbit like a world. It labored like a machine, trying to become a god. In the strategium of the Rock, every lumen seemed too bright. The hololith rendered Wormwood in layers of threat data, mineral density, warp corruption, orbital defense grids, and impossible geometry. No projection could carry the true obscenity of it. No augur could measure the insult. Yet every Dark Angel in that chamber understood enough. The Inner Circle Masters watched in silence as the corpse echo of Caliban rotated before them, twisted into a weapon by an enemy that collected oaths, as if they were spare parts. Azrael said nothing. He did not weep. He did not rage. He did not strike the hololithic table. His gauntleted hands rested at his sides. His helm lenses stared at Wormwood, and the silence that settled around him grew colder than void shadow. Those who had served beside him in war knew his anger. They had seen it expressed as orders, as executions, as strategies that killed enemies so thoroughly that even their ruins looked ashamed. This was worse. This was a stillness so complete, it felt like the moment before a blade touched the throat. Lazarus stood nearby, scarred face stern beneath the glow of tactical light. "Supreme Grand Master," he said, "orbital defense density exceeds projections. Surface batteries are grown into the continental structure. Auspex indicates mobile weapon towers and void shield blooms across the primary landmass. Warp output is increasing from the central complex." "The Dark Cathedral," Ezekiel said. The chief librarian's voice was low. Frost gathered on the edges of his psychic hood. "And beyond it," Azrael said, speaking at last, "the Warpforge Palace." The names sat in the chamber like curses. Wormwood's primary continent filled the hololith. Its defenses were layered around a vast black cathedral structure whose towers stabbed above cloud cover and trailed chains into the crust. Behind it, half submerged in firestorms and moving walls of brass, the Warpforge Palace turned its spires and industrial limbs as if preparing to assemble something from reality itself. Azrael studied it for another breath. "Clear the orbital guns along the primary descent path," he said. "Strike wings will establish landing corridors under cover from the rock. Deathwing will anchor the first breach points. Ravenwing will cut supply arteries and identify mobile defense nodes. Devastator and Dreadnought assets will suppress demon engines. Librarius elements will maintain warding circles against infection and false command echoes. Tech Marines will mark every engine route that can be killed. We advance upon the Dark Cathedral, breach toward the Warpforge Palace, and hold long enough for the rock to deliver final sanction." A successor master turned his helm slightly. "Exterminatus." Azrael did not look away from the diseased image of Caliban's ghost, on a scale worthy of the crime. No one argued. No one asked whether there might be something left to save. The Unforgiven had learned long ago that some wounds could only be answered by fire. The first bombardment began without flourish. The rock fired upon Wormwood with the fury of a fortress monastery that had carried 10,000 years of silence into one moment of release. Lance beams speared down through the upper atmosphere, turning clouds to glass and carving white wounds through. Orbital bastions. Macro cannon salvos fell in chains of thunder, each shell large enough to erase a district, each impact birthing rings of molten earth and shredded machine growth. Battle barges added their own fire, striking shield generators, defense towers, and gun clusters, half concealed beneath forests of iron-black trees. Wormwood answered. Continental batteries rotated upward from the planet's skin. Manufactorum towers unfolded like gun barrels. Mountain faces split open to reveal lance arrays made from brass ribs and demon glass. The surface fired into orbit with hate, guided by machine intelligence that no longer recognized mercy as a valid concept. One strike cruiser took a beam through its belly and broke open, spilling atmosphere, gun crews, and burning chapels into the void. Another vessel lost its prow to a salvo of warp-charged shells that curved around its void shields as if the shields had betrayed their own ship. Still the landing order came. Drop pods fell first, black and bone-white capsules screaming through the corrupted atmosphere. They plunged between flak bursts and burning debris, heat shields glowing, machine spirits roaring litanies of impact. Thunderhawks and storm ravens followed, engines howling, hulls shuddering under ground fire. Ravenwing craft cut lower through toxic clouds, outriders and speeders moving fast enough that enemy augurs fired at where they had been, instead of where they were. Teleport strikes cracked across the surface in bursts of pale light, and Deathwing Terminators appeared amid ash and molten brass, with Stormbolters already firing. The first unforgiven boot struck Wormwood, and the world tried to kill them. The ground flexed. A street of black stone and iron plates folded upward beneath a squad of intercessors, becoming a jaw of grinding machinery. 2 warriors leapt clear. 3 vanished waist-deep into gear teeth that closed with the wet crunch of ceramite, bone, and organs. Their brothers fired into the living street until the gears stopped turning, then dragged what remained free by the arms. The dead came apart at the waist, armor seals vomiting blood, shredded intestine, and broken fragments of spine across the road. A tech marine marked the location with a kill rune. Engine route beneath the thoroughfare, he voxed. Melter charges required. His servo arms were already cutting. The city around them rearranged itself. Gothic avenues turned sideways. Buttressed walls shifted to close firing lanes. Shrine doors opened onto furnace pits. Statues twisted their stone heads to watch the advance. Manufactorum towers rotated on buried axles, their upper levels unfolding into cannon arrays that hammered the landing zones with shells full of screaming scrap code. Demon root tendrils burst from ferrocrete, thick as battle tank hulls. Black bark split to reveal wet red muscle beneath. They lashed around squads, crushed warriors against walls, and pulled whole fire teams underground into mechanical earth that chewed with the patience of a mill. "Hold anchors," voxed a Deathwing sergeant. Bone-white Terminators formed the first immovable line beneath a rain of ash. Storm shields locked. Assault cannons spun. Cyclone missile racks opened and fired into the advancing dark. Around them, intercessor formations took cover behind fractured buttresses and wrecked landers, pouring disciplined bolter fire into cultist tides that came shrieking from cathedral alleys. Hellblasters fired in controlled volleys, plasma lighting their armor green-white as they burned through Black Legion plate and the armored bodies of corrupted Skitarii. The enemy came in layers. Black Legionaries advanced through smoke with bolters barking, their dark armor marked by the eye of the despoiler. They fought with the hard skill of veterans who had spent 10,000 years turning hatred into craft. Behind them marched dark Mechanicum Skitarii, their limbs too long, their weapons welded to their bones, their faces hidden behind brass masks that leaked steam and old blood. Cultists swarmed in tides, men and things that had once been men, carrying cleavers, autoguns, hooks, grenades, and icons made from spinal columns. Demon engines crawled over the buildings, some on legs of iron, some on tracks of bone, some dragged by chains of screaming slaves whose feet had been nailed to the road so that every step tore flesh away. Archiphane constructs came with them. They were not daemons in the crude manner of horn and claw. They were mechanisms that had learned to hate. Tall brass figures moved on jointed limbs, their heads faceless, save for keyholes burning with witchlight. They opened their torsos and fired hooks of black energy that caught Space Marines through the chest and drew out shining fragments of soul matter like wire from a spool. A librarian of the Guardians of the Covenant stepped forward, staff raised, and spoke a word of denial. The construct unfolded a second set of arms and struck him with a blade made from rotating teeth. His helm split. Boiling blood filled the inside of his faceplate and poured from the grill as his brothers dragged him back, still trying to speak the final syllable of the ward. The Unforgiven advanced anyway. Devastators established fire bases in the bones of broken plazas, lascannons and missile launchers picking apart demon engines as they emerged through smoke. Dreadnoughts strode through the kill zones like walking tombs of judgment. One ancient warrior of the Consecrators crushed a brass-skinned Predator engine under his fist while firing his assault cannon into a tide of cultists until their bodies became a red carpet beneath his feet. Forward, the dreadnought growled through ancient speakers. Forward, sons of the Lion, let this false forest burn. Ravenwing elements moved beyond the main line, racing through alleys that shifted beneath them and across bridges that tried to become nooses. Samael's forces struck supply arteries identified by Techmarine augers, cutting conveyor veins that pumped munitions and flesh slurry toward the front. Plasma talons flashed. Melter charges reduced engine nodes to craters. Speeders strafed columns of Skitari until their metal bodies fell sparking into heaps, then banked away before the surrounding buildings could rotate their guns into alignment. The librarians fought a second war beneath the first. They stood within circles of warding script, burned into wormwood skin, staffs planted, helms bowed against psychic pressure. They held back infection that came not as disease, but as memory. False Calibanic wind moved through the streets, carrying the scent of wet leaves and old rain. Voices whispered from the mouths of dead dark angels, naming brothers, naming sins, naming hidden chambers in the rock. A veteran sergeant froze for one breath when the voice of a dead mentor called to him from a cracked wall. His chaplain struck him across the helm with the haft of his Crozius. "Steal your soul." The sergeant turned and fired a full magazine into the wall. It bled. All along the front, sacred obscenity ruled. A wounded intercessor crawled from beneath a fallen column, one leg gone, his armor torn open at the abdomen. A servitor with half its face burned away recited a Medici prayer in a flat voice while dragging him by the backpack. The warrior's entrails spilled behind him in a shining rope until an apothecary clamped the wound shut and ordered him to keep his bolter raised. Nearby, a chain trap hidden in the road snapped upward and caught a successor chapter captain by the waist, hauling him into exposed gear teeth mounted in the wall of a manufactorum shrine. His brothers fired into the mechanism, but not before the teeth opened his armor and pulled out coils of organ meat in steaming loops. He died giving target coordinates. The coordinates were honored. A dreadnought's multi-melter reduced the shrine to slag. The landing zones stabilized by inches, then yards, then whole blocks. The Deathwing anchors held.
Remember, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support helps.
The Ravenwing cuts began to starve the forward defenses. Devastator fire and dreadnought pressure broke the first demon engine wave. Techmarines marked engine routes, severed conduits, and overloaded shield pylons. For every brother killed, another stepped into place. For every street that folded, another path was blasted open. The Unforgiven did not move quickly, but they moved with terrible certainty. Then the World Eaters entered the ground war. They were not deployed like soldiers. They were released. The red tide came from the southern approaches, roaring through industrial canyons and over heaps of their own dead. Cornete transports smashed into plazas and split open, vomiting berserkers into the ash. Dropcraft crashed deliberately into Dark Angel's positions so their passengers could crawl from the wreckage, already swinging chain axes. World Eaters charged. Through Black Legion firing lanes, through cultist mobs, through demon engine fire, through anything between themselves and the nearest skull. They did not defend Wormwood intelligently. They did not hold objectives unless standing atop them allowed more killing. They did not care for Vashtor's mechanisms or the Archiphane's design. Their arrival changed the battle from siege to massacre. The first Berserker wave struck the intercessor lines and vanished beneath bolter fire, leaving only torn bodies and hacked armor. The second wave hit before magazines were reloaded. Chain axes met combat blades, power fists, rifle stocks, and bare ceramite gauntlets. A World Eater drove his axe into a Dark Angel's helm and kept grinding until the head burst inside the helmet, blood and brain matter spraying from the neck seal. The dying Dark Angel locked one hand around the Berserker's wrist and detonated a crack grenade against both their chests. They disappeared in a red-black burst. Another World Eater leapt onto a dreadnought, hacking at its sarcophagus while laughing through a Vox grill clogged with blood. The ancient warrior seized him, crushed his torso flat, and hurled the remains into a charging pack hard enough to knock them from their feet. "Come," the dreadnought rumbled. "Spend yourselves." They did. More came. Azrael stood at the center of the widening front, sword drawn, robes snapping in the furnace wind. Around him, command icons shifted and died. The line was bending but not broken. The dark cathedral loomed ahead through smoke, its towers ringing bells made from skulls and engine housings. Beyond it, the warp-forged palace pulsed with mechanical dawn. Then the sky turned red. Every Vox channel crackled with static. Librarians cried warnings. Even the World Eaters paused, heads lifting like hounds scenting their master. Something descended through the burning clouds. It came wreathed in fire, wings spread wide, weapons chained to its hands, rage vast enough to make the planet's own engines shudder. Angron fell upon Wormwood like a judgment from a god that hated all creation. When he struck the battlefield, buildings collapsed outward. Dark angels and world eaters alike were hurled from their feet. A shockwave of blood heat rolled over the front, rupturing armor seals, bursting mortal slaves apart, and turning ash into a red storm. The Red Angel rose from the crater. Spinegrinder screamed. Samniarius burned. The Dark Angel's battle line bent beneath the weight of one being. Azrael saw the battle die by increments. It did not collapse all at once. That would have been cleaner. That would have been mercy. And Wormwood had been built in contempt of mercy. The front came apart in fragments, each one marked by a vanishing icon, a cut Vox channel, a squad rune blinking from green to amber to dead red before disappearing beneath a wash of static. The hololithic tactical feed projected inside his helm, stuttered and reformed, no longer a map, but a wound, struggling to remember its own shape. Landing zone Morthane was gone. No final transmission, no withdrawal marker, just a bloom of distortion and a last burst of bolter fire drowned beneath howling. The Ravenwing supply cut at the western artery failed as the road beneath them folded upward into a wall of grinding brass. Their life signs vanished in a line, too swift for pain to register on the Auspex. A dreadnought icon flickered near the shrine causeway, then spun uselessly as if the ancient warrior were being dragged underground. Angron could not be tracked. Wherever the Red Angel moved, the Auspex did not show mass, heat, motion, or even warp signature in any useful form. It returned only screaming distortion. The sound crawled through filtered command channels like a living thing. Serfs aboard orbiting ships tore off their headsets rather than hear it. Tech Marines cut their own feeds with hard binary curses. Librarians tasted brass and murder in the air. Azrael did not look for Angron on the map. He looked for the places where his line ceased to exist. That was enough. "Fall back by talons," he said. "Not by squads. Talons, interlocking fire. No warrior moves alone." His command passed through sealed channels, fragmented by scrap code, repeated by sergeants, carried by helm runes when Vox failed. Around him, the unforgiven obeyed with the grim precision of men who had been trained to die in formation. Then Angron came through the smoke again, a redemptor. Dreadnought of the Angels of Vengeance stood against him first, plasma incinerator glowing white, fist raised, sarcophagus seals blazing with oath scripture. The ancient warrior fired into the demon Primarch's chest at point-blank range. Plasma washed across Angron's armor and flesh, burning away meat in sheets, exposing furnace-red ribs and ropes of blackened muscle. The Red Angel staggered one step, only one. Spinegrinder struck the dreadnought sideways and tore through the sarcophagus housing, the chain-axe teeth chewing adamantium, relic plate, and the entombed hero within. The dreadnought's Vox emitted one burst of static that might have been a curse, a prayer, or a laugh. Angron seized the ruined machine by its shattered arm and hurled it into a repulsor tank. The tank's gravitic plates failed. It slammed into the ground, rolled, and burst open, spilling burning crew, ammunition, and torn armor plates across the avenue. World Eaters poured through the wound he opened. They came over the wreckage on foot, in packs, in fragments of formations that dissolved as soon as they sighted prey. Some had lost helmets, some had lost arms and carried chain axes in their teeth, until they could close remaining fingers around the haft. Their armor was red beneath old red, lacquered in blood that did not have time to dry. They roared butcher prayers to Khorne, not as liturgy, but as appetite made sound. Skulls for the skull throne, blood for the blood god. Open them, empty them, crown the ground. Dark angels answered with fewer words. Left flank. Fire. Reload. Brace. Plasma lines opened. Hellblasters burned the first wave down, their weapons flaring with caged starfire. Berserkers became stumbling silhouettes of molten armor and cooked bone. Bolters hammered. Frag grenades burst beneath charging feet. Chainswords met chain axes in showers of sparks and torn ceramite. A World Eater crashed into an intercessor and drove his axe through the warrior's helm, splitting faceplate, skull, and brain in a spray that painted the Aquila on the nearest wall. The dying Dark Angel held his killer close and fired his bolt pistol under the berserker's chin until the head burst apart inside its helm. More came. Always more. Belial and the Deathwing advanced into the breach as if walking into a chapel. Bone-white Terminators formed across the avenue in a line of living tombs. Their armor was scarred by wars that lesser chapters preserved as legends. Their storm shields locked edge to edge. Assault cannons spun, thunder hammers lowered, maces of absolution ignited with pale force. They did not speak loudly. They did not roar defiance. They accepted the impossible with the solemnity of executioners who had already counted the cost. Belial stood at their center. The Grand Master of the Deathwing looked small only because Angron existed. Against any other foe, he would have seemed a walking fortress, a relic warrior wrapped in the authority of the inner circle and the killing weight of centuries. His blade shone with restrained power. His stormbolter spat death in disciplined bursts, each shot punching through crimson armor and detonating inside transhuman flesh. "Hold the gate," Belial said. The Deathwing answered, "We hold." World Eaters broke against them. The first charge died on storm shields and bolter fire. The second reached the line and was crushed by thunder hammers, their bodies pulped into red paste that steamed on the corrupted stones. A berserker champion vaulted over a wrecked tank, roaring with both axes raised. Belial shot him through the throat, stepped beneath the falling corpse, and cut him apart before his body struck the ground. For the span of a few breaths, the rearguard worked. Then Angron reached them. He did not duel the Deathwing. He maimed the formation. Spinegrinder swept across the front rank and tore two Terminators apart at the waist, their ancient armor splitting under the chain teeth, their organs and sacred implants spraying across the shields of their brothers. Samni Arius thrust through a storm shield and the warrior behind it, the demon blade drinking the life from him in a burst of black fire. Angron's wings smashed another Terminator into a wall, hard enough to leave him embedded in stone, arms twitching, helm cracked open and leaking blood. Belial met him. The Grand Master struck first, blade carving a bright wound across Angron's abdomen. A lesser demon would have been bisected. A greater demon might have recoiled. Angron looked down at the wound as it boiled shut and slammed his forehead into Belial's helm. The impact staggered the Grand Master. His lenses cracked. He drove his sword upward, aiming for the throat, but Angron caught the blade in his bare hand. The edge bit deep. The Red Angel squeezed until the weapon screamed against his grip, then kicked Belial in the chest. Belial flew backward through a statue of a blind angel and crashed into the steps of a manufactorum shrine. The stone burst beneath him. He rose to one knee because the Deathwing did not remain down, while life still clung to them. Angron was already there. Spinegrinder came down. Belial turned enough that the blow did not take his head. It took his shoulder guard, part of his chest plate, and the left side of his armor in a fountain of torn cabling, ceramite shards, and blood. The chain teeth bit into flesh beneath the plate and ripped free with strips of meat clinging to the weapon. Belial struck back with his fist, cracking Angron's jaw hard enough to snap teeth from the demon Primarch's mouth. For one instant, the Deathwing saw their lord wound a son of the Emperor. Then Angron seized Belial by the torso and smashed him into the ground. Once, twice, a third time. Each impact cratered the stone and drove broken armor deeper into flesh. The sound was not battle, it was butchery performed on a relic. The Deathwing attacked in silence. They bought Belial's life with their own. One Terminator drove a thunderhammer into Angron's knee and was torn in half for it. Another locked both arms around Samniarius and held the blade away for the breath it took a brother to drag Belial clear. Angron opened him from groin to throat with a claw, and the warrior's blood spilled out in a steaming flood across bone-white armor. A third fired his assault cannon until the barrels melted, then charged with the ruined weapon held like a club. Azrael watched Belial's rune flicker, but not die. "Recover him," he ordered. "Path denied," came the answer. "Create one." He withdrew the core of his force into the Gothic structures around the avenue, not as flight, but as design. Wormwood's buildings were treacherous, shifting, hateful things, but they still had walls, arches, plazas, choke points, and kill corridors. Azrael used them. Devastators fell back into second-floor firing galleries. Hellblasters took position behind broken stained glass windows and collapsed buttresses. Intercessors seeded the streets with melter traps and crack charges. Dreadnoughts stood at avenue mouths like tomb doors. Tech Marines rigged fuel conduits to detonate when the red tide passed over them. "South Arch," Azrael said. A lieutenant answered. "Marked. Plasma overlap. Set. Melter triggers? Armed." Azrael looked across the line. Warriors were bleeding. Armor was scorched, cracked, and slick with filth. Apothecaries moved from body to body with narthecium blades, sealing wounds that could be sealed and harvesting progenoid glands from those who had passed beyond use. One apothecary knelt beside a brother whose lower body was gone, the remaining torso still firing a bolt rifle propped across rubble. The apothecary placed one gauntlet on his helm, waited until the warrior's last magazine ran dry, then ended his pain with a murmured oath and took what the chapter could not afford to lose. "Hold," Azrael said. The World Eaters came. They surged under the South Arch in a red avalanche. Azrael allowed the first ranks through, then the second. When the mass filled the kill zone, he lowered his blade. "Kill!" Melter charges erupted beneath them. The archway became a furnace. Berserkers vanished in white heat. Plasma poured from both flanks, cutting down those that staggered from the blast. Heavy bolters thudded from the gallery above, mass reactive shells bursting torsos into wet ruin. A dreadnought fired into the packed street until the stones disappeared beneath shredded bodies. "Reload," Azrael said. Magazines changed. Plasma coils vented. Warriors shifted firing angles. The next wave came over the dead. Hold, kill, reload, hold again. The attacks failed. Again and again, they failed. The World Eaters hurled themselves into overlapping fire, through traps, beneath falling masonry, into blades and bolt shells and burning plasma. Each failure left piles of hacked armor, skulls split open, limbs still twitching, chain axes grinding against the ground after dead fingers locked around their triggers. Yet every failure pleased Khorne. The ground became a shrine. Skulls rolled beneath boots. Blood filled the cracks between stones. The Butcher God did not care who won the corridor. He cared that the corridor became red. The encirclement tightened. Ammunition counters fell into warning amber, then red. Some squads were down to bolt pistols and blades. Hellblaster coils overheated from sustained fire, venting steam and radioactive glare. Apothecaries ran out of time before they ran out of wounded. Librarians maintaining the warding circles began to burn from within. One collapsed to his knees, psychic hood glowing, blood running from every seal of his armor. He continued the ward until his skull split under the pressure and blue fire poured from the fracture. Still the rage pressed in. Angron's presence became more than a location on the field. It became weather. It moved in the blood. It hammered at the hearts. It whispered through the nails of the world eaters and through the battle instincts of loyal warriors who had never known those implants. Hate became easier. Restraint became heavier. Every insult remembered by every son of the lion rose toward the surface. Every secret became a knife turned outward. Every ancient shame begged to become fury. A dark angel sergeant stared at a wounded world eater crawling toward him with a combat knife between his teeth. The sergeant's bolter was empty. His blade was broken. For one heartbeat, he wanted to kneel on the traitor's chest and tear him apart with his hands. He wanted to feel ribs break. He wanted to answer rage with rage and call it justice. Then he remembered black cells beneath the rock. He remembered oaths spoken in candle darkness. He remembered that the unforgiven did not survive because they were pure. They survived because their shame was colder than anger. He drew his bolt pistol and fired once. Around Azrael, the line prepared to die without theatre. No speeches, no pleas, no final declarations for the enemy to hear. Brothers checked ammunition, tightened grips, sealed damaged helms, and stepped closer to one another as the circle shrank. Belial had been dragged behind the inner line, his life sign unstable, his armor a ruin. The Deathwing around him formed a silent wall. Angron came again through the burning avenue. The Red Angel was wounded and terrible, drenched in blood that was not all his own. Spinegrinder dragged sparks from the ground. Samniarius smoked in his fist. World Eaters gathered behind him, howling, beating weapons against armor, chanting for skulls, for blood, for the death of the first. Azrael raised the sword of secrets. The unforgiven leveled their guns. Then the sky tore open in gold. Drop pods fell through the burning clouds, not black, not green, not bone white, but crimson and gold, their descent trails cutting through the ash like spears of dawn hurled into hell. Gunships followed, storm ravens and thunderhawks bearing blood-red hulls and angelic markings, their weapons already firing as they plunged toward the battlefield. Lascannons stabbed downward. Heavy bolters hammered the World Eaters' rear ranks into bursting meat. Missiles struck demon engines crawling along the outer ruins and blew them apart in gouts of brass, oil, and burning ichor. A voice crossed the vox, old, severe, and bright with command that had endured more death than most worlds could name. Sons of Sanguinius, descend! Golden warriors fell from the gunships on wings of fire. Dante's host came into the slaughter. Gold fell through the murder sky. The blood angels descended as if some dying fragment of nobility had been hurled into the furnace of wormwood and chosen to burn beautifully before it died. Drop pods screamed through the cloud cover, their hulls glowing with atmospheric heat, their retros firing too late and too hard as they slammed into plazas choked with corpses and broken ceramite. Assault squads leapt from descending gunships before the landing claws touched stone. Jump packs roared. Red armor flashed through ash and fire. Chainswords ignited in snarling chorus. Bolt pistols barked downward into the backs of World Eaters, still pressing against the unforgiven line. Above them all, the sanguinary guard came like falling icons. Their armor was gold, though the light of wormwood did everything it could to make gold look like brass, and brass like blood. Winged jump packs burned through black smoke. Death masks reflected fire and slaughter without expression. Glaives and encarmine blades caught the hellish glow as they struck into the red tide. For a heartbeat, even amid Wormwood's hatred, there was the impression of angels descending into a charnel pit. Then they landed, and beauty became violence. A sanguinary guard warrior struck a World Eater champion from above and drove his blade through the traitor's collar seal, down through spine and hearts, pinning him upright for the instant it took a bolter round to burst the champion's skull from within. Another landed amid cultists and swept his blade in a single flawless circle, severing arms, throats, and faces, leaving bodies collapsing in a ring around him as if some ritual of devotion had been completed in blood. Assault marines crashed into the flanks of the berserker tide, chainswords chewing through armor joints, boots crushing skulls underfoot, red wings of jump pack fire scattering ash behind them. Blood Angels' firepower converged on Angron. Storm Ravens banked low and fired everything they carried. Lascannon beams struck the Red Angel's torso and shoulders, cutting smoking trenches through demon flesh. Heavy bolters hammered him in rippling impacts, mass-reactive shells detonating against brass plate and exposed muscle. Missiles burst across his wings. Plasma from the Dark Angel's line joined the assault, green-white volleys punching through the smoke as Azrael's warriors shifted without needing spoken orders. Red and green, gold and bone, the sons of Sanguinius and the sons of the Lion shaped the battlefield between them by instinct older than the Imperium's wounds. Dante landed upon a broken tower stair, jump pack flaring, cloak snapping behind him in furnace wind. He was ancient, not merely old in the manner of warriors who had endured campaigns and centuries. Dante carried the weight of too many last stands, too many doomed worlds, too many brothers committed to pyres beneath alien suns. His armor was ornate, magnificent, and battered in ways that no artificer could truly hide. The death mask of Sanguinius looked out over Wormwood with serene sorrow, while the man beneath it bore exhaustion deep enough to become a second skeleton. The axe mortalis rested in his hand. The perdition pistol burned in the other like a caged star. He saw Azrael across the broken avenue. No stable Vox channel joined them. Scrap code 8 transmission bursts. Demon static spat curses in dead voices. Half the command net was ash. They did not need it. Dante looked once to the right, where World Eaters pressed through a ruined manufactorum gate. Azrael had already moved Devastators into position there. Dante lifted his axe toward the left, where a Blood Angel's assault wave could exploit a breach in the enemy flank. Azrael shifted a plasma line to cover their approach. Dante fired the perdition pistol into the nearest demon engine and burned out its heart. Azrael raised the Sword of Secrets, and the Unforgiven opened a corridor of disciplined death through the center of the battlefield. Blood Angels struck through that corridor like a blade of red fire. Dante's voice finally cut across a surviving command band, strained by interference, but unmistakable. By blood and by duty, we hold this ruin until the last wing burns. Azrael answered with a single word. Advance. The trap formed around Angron. The Dark Angels gave ground where it would draw him, held ground where it would slow him, and flooded pre-marked lanes with plasma, melter, and bolt fire. The Blood Angels took the sky above those lanes, descending in timed assault bursts, never staying where the Red Angels' first strike could take them all. Redemptor dreadnoughts advanced from the flanks, their weapons blazing. One fired macroplasma into Angron's chest until the Daemon Primarch's armor glowed white and flesh peeled back in burning strips. Another hammered him with onslaught cannon fire, shells tearing chunks from his wings and blasting holes through the membrane. Sanguinary guards swept in and struck at the exposed wounds. For the first time since his descent onto Wormwood, Angron staggered. It was not much. One step, a bracing of the leg, a tilt of the head as massed fire hammered him from every angle. Yet every warrior who saw it understood the significance. The Red Angel had been slowed, not banished, not beaten, not humbled, slowed. The Blood Angels seized the moment. Assault squads slammed into World Eaters packs before they could reach their gene sire. Dark Angels' intercessors fired past them with disciplined precision. Raven Wing speeders cut across rear approaches, shredding cultist reinforcements and forcing berserkers to turn away from the central avenue. A Deathwing Knight drove his mace into a Cornete champion's breastplate and caved the warrior inward, then stepped aside as a Blood Angel with a jump pack descended behind him and finished the next foe with a chainsword through the neck seal. For a breath, brotherhood across divided legions became function. The Unforgiven were cold iron, the sons of Baal were falling fire, Between them, Angron's advance faltered, then slowing him ceased to matter. Angron roared, and the roar broke formations. It struck the blood angels in the blood, where the red thirst slept with teeth already wet. It struck the dark angels in the hidden chambers of shame and old fury. It struck world eaters like a benediction made of broken bone. The sound rolled out from him, and every warrior felt the invitation to abandon discipline, abandon memory, abandon everything except the joy of tearing another living thing apart. The sanguinary guard came at him again. They fought like legends and died like meat. One golden warrior drove his encarmine blade through Angron's lower ribs, the weapon shining as it burned into demon flesh. Angron caught him by the winged jump pack and ripped him backward. The wings tore free in a spray of sparks, fuel, and blood. Before the warrior could strike again, Angron smashed him face first into the ground. The golden death mask flattened. The skull beneath burst. Blood ran from the eye lenses in two dark streams. Another struck at Angron's wrist and nearly severed tendons the size of ship cables. Samniarius answered, passing through the artificer plate at the warrior's waist. The upper half of the sanguinary guard continued the strike for a heartbeat after the lower half had fallen away. Angron backhanded the torso into a wall, where it broke open like a casket filled with red offerings. A third descended from above, blade raised in perfect execution posture. Angron looked up and caught him out of the air by the throat. The warrior fired his wrist-mounted bolter into the demon Primarch's face until one of Angron's eyes burst in black flame. Angron squeezed. The golden gorget collapsed. The helm popped free under pressure, trailing spinal fluid and blood, and the body convulsed in his grip before he hurled it into the advancing blood angels below. A Redemptor dreadnought charged him. Its fist slammed into Angron's side and cracked armor. Its plasma incinerator fired point blank into his abdomen. Angron's body opened under the blast, but he did not fall. Spinegrinder came up beneath the dreadnought's weapon arm and tore it away in a shrieking storm of metal. The ancient warrior inside growled a battle oath through damaged speakers and swung his remaining fist. Angron let the blow strike him, then drove Samniarius through the sarcophagus. The dreadnought spasmed as the demon blade found the hero within. Angron kicked the dying machine backward into a squad of blood angels, crushing them beneath its collapsing bulk. Noble assault became red ruin. Blood angels still came. That was their glory and their curse. They came through blood mist and shattered wings, through falling stone and demon flame, through the bodies of brothers whose masks had been crushed into gold splinters. They came because retreat before such a monster meant allowing him to reach the wounded line of the unforgiven and break it beyond recovery. Dante saw the pattern shift. The trap had bought moments, not victory. Angron was turning toward Azrael's line again. The Deathwing had barely recovered Belial. Ammunition was almost spent. The Blood Angels had enough strength for one more blow before the red tide swallowed them. Dante ignited his jump pack. He rose through ash and fire, old armor screaming under acceleration. Angron's head turned. The demon Primarch recognized motion, challenge, the bright shape of a soul that had refused death for far too long. Dante landed, atop a tower whose upper floors had collapsed into a jagged crown of stone, brass, and bodies. The dead lay everywhere there. Blood angels with wings torn away. Dark angels cut open by chain axes. World eaters bisected and still twitching. Cultists burned down to blackened skeletons. The tower overlooked the central avenue, and for one clear heartbeat, it became an arena raised above the slaughter. Angron climbed toward him by smashing his way through the side of the structure. Dante fired the perdition pistol. The melter beam struck Angron in the chest and bored through armor, flesh, and bone in a line of white fury. The Red Angel lurched. Dante leapt forward, jump pack flaring in a short burst, and brought the Axe Mortalis down into the wound. The relic blade bit deep. Angron's blood erupted in a steaming sheet across Dante's armor. Dante tore the axe free and struck again. He was magnificent. He moved with the precision of a warrior who had survived every imaginable battlefield, and the desperation of one who knew survival was not the same as hope. He used the broken tower as terrain, forcing Angron to turn through shattered pillars, to overextend against empty air, to strike stone where Dante had been a breath before. The perdition pistol fired into Angron's thigh. The axe mortalis cut across the demon Primarch's forearm, then his throat, then the side of his skull. Dante's jump pack carried him out of reach by inches, never farther, never wasting movement. For moments that would be remembered as legend by those who survived, Commander Dante held the Red Angel's wrath. But he was still a space marine. Angron was a Primarch. Worse, he was a Primarch remade as a demon prince of Khorne. The gulf revealed itself not in one blow, but in accumulation. Every near miss from Spinegrinder shattered stone, hard enough to send fragments through Dante's armor. Every shockwave struck his old bones. Every burst of heat and rage dragged at the beast sleeping inside his blood. Dante's strikes wounded Angron, but Angron's wounds closed. Dante's armor cracked and stayed cracked. Dante's breath grew harsher. Angron's fury only deepened. Samniarius clipped Dante's shoulder and spun him sideways. The demon blade did not pierce fully, but the wound it left burned black across gold plate. Dante fired the perdition pistol into Angron's face. The shot took flesh from the demon Primarch's cheek and exposed teeth in a grin that had nothing to do with humor. Angron headbutted him. Dante struck the tower floor hard enough to crater it. He rose. Of course he rose. Angron kicked him before he could set his stance. The blow hurled Dante through a broken pillar and across the tower's crown. He slid through blood and rubble. One wing of his jump pack sheared almost completely away. He tried to lift the pistol. Spinegrinder descended and knocked the weapon from his hand, taking 2 fingers and part of the gauntlet with it. Dante swung the axe mortalis in return, cutting into Angron's wrist. Angron seized him by the breastplate. He lifted Dante from the ground and smashed him down. The tower shook. Bones cracked beneath artificer plate. The death mask of Sanguinius struck stone and rang like a funeral bell. Dante still held the axe. He drove it into Angron's side. The Red Angel barely noticed. He smashed Dante down again, and again. The third impact split the tower floor beneath them. Dante's armor was a ruin of cracked gold, torn crimson, and leaking blood. He tried to stand, one knee under him, axe still in hand, because his grip had not remembered how to release duty. Angron loomed over him, vast and burning, blood pouring from wounds that closed as quickly as they opened. There was no elegant gloating, no speech worthy of a saga. Angron did not care that this was Dante, lord of the Blood Angels, regent of a sundered imperium, ancient son of Sanguinius, survivor of more wars than some chapters had fought. To Angron, he was only a skull denied too long. Below, Azrael saw Dante fall. He saw Angron raise Spinegrinder. The battlefield seemed to pause. War did not stop. Bolters still fired. Chain axes still screamed. Men still died with their organs spilling through broken armor. Gunships still burned in the sky. The dead still fell. Yet every warrior near enough to see the tower felt history narrow toward one stroke. Azrael moved, but distance mocked him. Sanguinary Guard tried to rise on broken wings. Deathwing turned their guns upward. Blood Angels shouted through ruined vox channels. None of them would be fast enough. Angron brought the chain axe down. Shadows erupted between him and Dante. Not smoke, not teleport flare, not the oily darkness of demon craft. Shadows, deep and cold, carrying the scent of rain on leaves and old forests under a moonless sky. A shield met Spinegrinder. The impact cracked the air with golden force. The tower's remaining windows burst outward. World Eaters staggered. Blood Angels fell to one knee. Dark Angels froze, as if struck through the heart by a memory older than their chapter. The Emperor's shield held. Behind it stood a warrior in green, old as myth, terrible as judgment, his blade drawn and his eyes fixed upon Angron with the merciless calm of a hunter who had found the beast at last. Silence followed the impact. It should not have been possible. The battlefield had no room for silence. Wormwood still screamed through its engine roots. World Eaters still hacked at the unforgiven line. Bolters still detonated in meat and ceramite. Gunships still burned through the choking sky. Men died by blade, shell, tooth, flame, and falling stone. The planet itself ground its corrupted streets together, chewing the dead and the living alike into paste beneath brass teeth. Yet for a heartbeat after the shield caught Spinegrinder, all sound seemed to fall away from the tower. Angron's chain axe shrieked against the Emperor's shield, its teeth clawing for purchase, each one large enough to bite through a tank's armor and keep grinding until the crew were red vapor inside the hull. Golden force flared from the shield's face. The light was not gentle, it was not warm. It struck outward in a hard, punishing wave, scouring bloodsteam from the air and burning demon frost from the stone. Dante lay broken behind it, armor cracked, one wing of his jump pack torn away, the death mask of Sanguinius dented and slick with blood. The blow meant to end him had not landed. Between Dante and death stood a figure who had stepped from shadow and forest mist. He wore green armor the color of old leaves seen beneath storm clouds, not the bright green of parade plate, not the polished heraldry of a chapter trying to be seen, but the deep and predatory green of Caliban's drowned woods. A cloak hung from his shoulders, dark and heavy, stirring in a wind that did not belong to Wormwood. His sword, fealty, waited in his hand with its edge lowered, calm as an executioner who knew the condemned could not run. The shield in his other hand still burned from the arrested strike. Lionel Johnson had returned. He did not arrive like a savior. There was no choir of victory, no clean radiance, no proclamation from heaven. He came as something older than imperial ceremony, something dragged from myth with mud still on its boots and the scent of dead forests clinging to its cloak. He came like a hunter, walking from between trees after tracking a beast for years beyond counting. He came like a king who had not forgiven his kingdom for burning. Behind him, the shadows opened wider. Mist coiled across the tower stones, cold and silver beneath the red sky. Within it moved warriors in ancient plate, their armor marked by old patterns, repaired scars, and heraldry that struck the dark angels below, like blades driven beneath the ribs. Some wore black, some wore green, some bore sigils half burned away or hidden beneath fresh oaths. Their faces were helmed, but their presence needed no explanation to those who knew the darkest wound of the first. The Risen emerged with the lion. To the blood angels, they were reinforcements from a miracle no mortal commander had time to question. To the World Eaters, they were only more skulls entering reach. To the Dark Angels, they were scandal-made flesh, a walking contradiction, a confession with bolters raised. Fallen, yet not damned. Condemned, yet standing beside the Primarch. A sin returning not in chains, but in formation. Across the unforgiven line, shock passed like a shell burst. A Deathwing knight lowered his mace by a fraction before discipline locked his arm still. A Ravenwing rider, bleeding from a split gorget, whispered a prayer that ended as a curse. A chaplain stared upward, Crozius clenched so tightly that the haft groaned beneath his gauntlet. Warriors who had hunted the fallen across centuries now saw warriors bearing that same shame step from the lion's shadow and fire into the enemies of mankind. Azrael saw them all. He saw the Risen. He saw Dante broken. He saw Angron looming before the returned Primarch. He saw his chapter's secret standing in the open upon a tower of corpses while wormwood burned around them. And he saw his father. For a moment that would never be entered into any record, Azrael was not Supreme Grand Master. He was a son standing beneath the gaze of the Gene-Sire, whose absence had shaped every oath, every hunt, every lie, every sealed chamber beneath the rock. Awe struck him like a blade through the breastbone. Rage followed, sharp and immediate, aimed at the Risen who stood where prisoners should have knelt. Beneath both came calculation, cold and necessary. The miracle could be judged later, if there was a later. "Recover, Dante," Azrael said. His voice cut through the command channel with such controlled severity that warriors steadied simply by hearing it. "Belial remains priority. Stabilize the inner line. Ravenwing, sever the eastern pressure. Deathwing, advance by shield knots. Blood Angels, strike the exposed packs. Do not look to the tower. The tower is not our war," Lazarus replied at once. "By your will." The lion moved. Angron ripped Spinegrinder free from the shield and swung again. The blow came with enough force to split the tower's crown and scatter its dead into the avenue below. The lion did not meet strength with strength as a fool would. He turned, shield angled, stance shifting by the width of a blade edge. Spinegrinder struck the Emperor's shield and glanced aside in a thunderclap of golden recoil. The chain axe carved through stone instead, cutting a trench through the tower floor and vomiting shards into the air. The lion watched Angron, not with surprise, not with fear, not even with anger at first. He studied him as a hunter, studied a wounded beast too dangerous to pity. The Red Angel towered above him, wings torn and healing, flesh blistered from plasma fire, eyes burning with Khorne's endless demand. Brass chains shook around his wrists. Spinegrinder snarled. Samniarius hissed black smoke and whispered murder through the air. The butcher's nails crowned his skull in a ruin of metal and torment, pulsing with every heartbeat like a cage built inside rage itself. The lion's face hardened. There had been a brother once, a damaged one, a furious one, a slave who had never escaped the shape of his chains, even when given armies and worlds to break. The lion saw fragments of that truth beneath the demon flesh, buried under god worship, pain, and 10,000 years of slaughter. Disgust came. Grief followed it. Judgment ended both. "You were Angron," the lion said. The Red Angel's head twitched. His ruined eye reformed in its socket, red light burning wetly through new flesh. The name reached him like a spear cast into deep water. Something moved beneath the rage. A memory. A sanded arena. A father he had hated. Brothers he had despised. The taste of nails biting into thought. "Lion," Angron growled. The word was broken, dragged out through teeth and blood. Then his lips peeled back. "Brother, enemy, skull." The lion raised the shield again. "No," he said. "Not brother. Not now." Angron roared and charged. The tower buckled under him. He came with the directness of annihilation, too vast and too fast, every step cracking stone, every beat of his wings sending bodies tumbling from the height. Dante lay behind the lion, struggling to rise, one gauntlet scraping across blood-slick rock toward the haft of the Ax Mortalis. The lion did not glance back. He denied Angron even that satisfaction. Fealty struck first. The lion stepped inside the line of Spinegrinder, shield catching the haft and shunting it outward while his blade cut across Angron's wrist. The wound opened deep. Black-red blood sprayed across the shield and hissed where the Emperor's light burned it. Samniarius came in from the other side, a killing arc meant to take the lion from hip to shoulder. He leaned away by the narrowest margin, cloak splitting where the demon blade kissed cloth, then drove the shield's rim into Angron's jaw. The impact snapped the demon Primarch's head sideways. Angron laughed like a collapsing furnace and tried to bite him. The lion withdrew just enough to make the bite fail, then cut again, low and cruel, opening the back of Angron's knee. Not a heroic stroke, not a flourish, a hunter's wound, a disabling cut. Angron stumbled, not from weakness, but from violated momentum. The Red Angel hated that more than pain. He turned fully from Dante. That was the lion's first victory. Below, Azrael saw it. The Primarch had not merely saved Dante. He had stolen Angron's attention, robbed the blood god of a skull already promised by the descending axe, and drawn the most destructive being on the battlefield away from the Loyalist center. It was not mercy. It was tactics sharpened into cruelty. The lion had made himself the wound Angron could not ignore. "Now," Azrael said. The Unforgiven moved. Deathwing shield knots advanced through the gore-choked avenues, storm shields raised, storm bolters firing past their edges. Blood Angels' assault squads rose on jump packs and struck the World Eaters' packs from above, not with the earlier beauty of the charge, but with vengeance made practical. Chainswords tore through neck seals. Bolt pistols barked into open helms. Sanguinary guard survivors, golden armor split and stained red, dragged Dante from the tower's lower ruin under covering fire from Dark Angel's plasma lines. A risen warrior appeared beside a Deathwing knight in the street below, firing an ancient bolter into the flank of a Cornete champion. For one heartbeat, the Deathwing warrior turned his mace toward him instead of the enemy. The Risen did not flinch. "Judge me when the butchers are dead," he voxed. The Deathwing knight held for a moment longer, then turned and crushed the Cornete champion's skull with his mace. "Later," he answered. Together they advanced. Ravenwing outriders struck the eastern pressure as ordered, racing through shifting streets, while Wormwood tried to close around them. Plasma fire burned through World Eaters' transports. Melter charges broke engine routes. A land speeder skimmed so low through a plaza that its underside tore heads from cultists before its heavy bolter finished the rest. Devastators re-established overlapping lanes of fire. Dreadnoughts pushed forward through corpse heaps, their fists and guns working without pause. Apothecaries dragged Dante and Belial toward the same fortified extraction point, both legends reduced to bleeding burdens, and both still too valuable to abandon to the red tide. The Blood Angels saw the lion and fought harder, not because hope had returned cleanly. Hope was too soft a word for Wormwood. They fought because the impossible had happened in front of them, and to waste the impossible would be a sin even the dead could not forgive. The Dark Angels fought with renewed coldness, not joy, not relief, but the terrible tightening of purpose. Their gene-sire stood upon the field. Their shame had walked from the shadows beside him. Their secrets were bleeding into open war. There would be reckoning. But first, there would be killing. Upon the tower, Angron hurled himself at the lion again. The lion retreated by steps, drawing him across the crown and away from Dante's blood trail. Each movement was measured. Each block angled Angron's power into stone. Each cut answered excess with precision. Angron's weapons came like the fall of fortress gates. Spinegrinder tore chunks from the tower. Samniarius left burning wounds in the air. The lion gave ground only where the ground served him, and never where Angron wanted him to go. "You hide," Angron snarled. "You turn, you deny, fight." "I am fighting," the lion said. He drove fealty through Angron's forearm, twisted the blade, and tore free a rope of demon flesh and blackened tendon. Angron smashed him with a wing. The blow struck the lion hard enough to send him skidding across the tower stones. His boots carved furrows through blood and ash. He caught himself at the edge, shield raised before Spinegrinder could take his head. The chain axe crashed down. Golden light burst. The tower split beneath them, cracks racing outward through stone, brass, and corrupted root. Below, Wormwood answered the force of them. The planet's skin groaned. Angron came again, all rage, all mass, all god-chained murder. The lion rose into him, no longer yielding ground, shield forward, sword held low. Two Primarchs collided. The impact cracked Wormwood's skin. Angron struck as though a fortress had learned hatred and fallen from the sky. The blow came down with Spinegrinder howling, teeth screaming through the blood-choked air, each metal fang dragging sparks from reality before it ever touched the lion. The tower beneath them had already split under the last impact, its foundations cracking through stone, brass, and demon root. The Red Angel's shadow swallowed the broken crown of the structure, vast wings beating ash into spirals around him, Samniarius burning black in his other hand like a wound that refused to close. The lion did not meet the strike head-on. He stepped half a pace aside. It was a small movement, almost nothing. A mortal observer would have missed it and died before understanding it mattered. Spine-grinder missed the line of his helm and slammed into the tower floor, carving through corrupted stone and the bodies strewn across it. The weapon bit so deep that the tower screamed, not as a building, but as a living thing with nerves threaded through its walls. Fealty answered. The lion's blade cut low, fast, and without flourish. It opened the back of Angron's knee, exactly where he had wounded him before, biting through regrown flesh and tendon before the demon Primarch's body could remember how to heal. Black-red blood sprayed across the stones. Angron's leg bent under him for the width of a heartbeat. The lion was already gone. Samniarius came around in a killing arc, too fast for anything so huge, its edge singing with the hunger of trapped demons. The lion caught it on the Emperor's shield. The impact detonated in gold. The force of Angron's own strike rebounded through the shield and back into his arm, snapping muscle, cracking brass plate, driving a tremor up to his shoulder. The demon Primarch roared, not in pain alone, but in outrage that his violence had been returned to him. Again he attacked. Again the lion refused the war Angron demanded. This was not a duel for honor. It was not the clean exchange of champions beneath banners, while armies watched in reverent silence. It was a natural disaster with blades, and only one of the monsters within it understood that disaster could be guided. Angron fought as Collapse fought, as Avalanche, as Meteor, as Siege Tower falling through a city wall. The lion fought like a hunter who had already mapped the beast's death and now needed only to make the beast walk toward it. Spine-grinder tore through a fallen gunship and lifted it from the tower's side in a storm of metal. Angron hurled the wreckage at him. The craft still burned, its engine block vomiting promethium, its dead pilot hanging from the shattered cockpit in straps soaked black. The lion raised the shield and angled the impact. The wreck screamed across the shield's face, broke apart, and spun away over the edge of the tower, scattering burning metal into the packed world eaters below. Fealty flashed through the smoke, a shallow cut across Angron's wrist, a thrust beneath the lower ribs, a brutal downward chop into the tendons of the ankle. None of the wounds should have mattered. Against any lesser being, each would have ended the fight. Against Angron, they were moments purchased. His flesh closed, bones cracked back into shape, tendons writhed and reknotted, brass chains healed where they had been split. He was too much power given form, too much rage fed by a god that cared nothing for loss so long as blood continued to fall. But each wound made him turn. Each cut stole balance. Each shield impact sent his own strength back through him. Each overextended swing cost him position. That was how the lion was cruel. He did not waste rage. He did not bellow his hate into the sky. He did not answer brother with brother, wrath with wrath, wound with confession. He made Angron suffer the discipline he had abandoned. He punished force with geometry. He answered fury with placement. He let the Red Angel spend himself against a wall that moved only when it wished to. Below, the war shifted around the duel. Azrael did not look up again after the Primarchs vanished behind smoke and falling stone. He had seen enough. His father had returned, and the battlefield had not ended. That was Command's final cruelty. Or had to wait its turn behind ammunition, casualty counts, and extraction routes. Captain Aphael reached him through a corridor of broken statues and dead world eaters, his crimson armor scorched, his helm cracked across one lens. The blood angels around him moved like warriors fighting through grief that had no time to become grief. Sanguinary guard survivors bore Dante between them, their golden plate ruined, their wings torn and bent. Dante still lived. That fact alone seemed impossible. The old lord's chest rose in shallow, stubborn breaths beneath the broken gold of his armor. His hand remained locked around the haft of the Ax Mortalis until an apothecary pried it loose with reverence. Aphael looked once toward the tower where thunder still rolled. "Lord Azrael," he said, voice tight through damaged vox. "Commander Dante lives. Barely." "Then keep him so. We require a landing corridor. Gunships cannot hold station under this fire." Azrael turned his helm toward the east, where Wormwood's streets folded and unfolded like the ribs of a dying beast. Tactical runes flickered, vanished, returned in altered places. Nothing stayed where the map claimed it had been. "The eastern plaza will serve," Azrael said. Aphael looked toward it. A manufactorum tower there had just rotated its upper galleries into weapon barrels and fired into a Dark Angel's fallback column. The street below inverted, spilling brothers, corpses, and wreckage into a pit lined with grinding teeth. "That plaza is alive. Then we kill it." Aphael gave one sharp nod. "Sons of Baal, with me." Blood Angels moved with renewed fury, not reckless now, but sharpened by necessity. Assault squads rose on jump packs and crossed above shifting streets before the ground could betray them. Dark Angels' Hellblasters covered their movement, plasma fire burning open windows through the enemy lines. Devastators hammered demon engines crawling along the flanks. Dreadnoughts advanced in staggered pairs, one firing while the other moved, their ancient occupants growling clipped kill confirmations through speakers full of static. Wormwood resisted them. A street rolled over like a serpent and crushed a squad of intercessors against the wall of a chapel. Their armor burst under the pressure, blood and black carapace fluid squeezing from cracked plate before the entire wall folded inward and swallowed them. A librarian drove his force staff into the ground and spoke a ward that froze the street in place long enough for Ravenwing riders to cross. The cost of the ward burned through him from within. When he turned away, one eye had gone white and smoke leaked from his mouth grill. A demon forge rose from beneath the western line, its furnace doors opening like jaws. It belched constructs made from brass frames, chained soles, and wet muscle wound around pistons. Servitors dragged wounded Astartes away while reciting Medici prayers in flat, damaged voices. One servitor pulled a bisected blood angel by the backpack, the warrior's lower half gone, his intestines trailing through ash until a world eater stepped on them and laughed. The dying blood angel raised his pistol and shot the berserker through the eye lens before his own hearts failed. The plaza was taken by slaughter measured in paces. Azrael and Aphael did not speak often. They did not need to. Dark Angels created corridors of fire. Blood Angels struck through them. Ravenwing cut the rear approaches. Deathwing held the center, while wounded were dragged behind the line. Belial's life sign flickered, but remained present. Dante's did the same. Around both, apothecaries worked with blades, clamps, blood seals, and prayers too quiet for anyone but the dying to hear. Above them, the tower finally gave way. Angron drove the lion backward through its spine. The structure collapsed beneath both Primarchs, and they fell through screaming architecture into the depths of Wormwood. Stone, brass, corpses, broken tanks, and demon roots plunged with them. The lion struck a sloping wall halfway down, boots carving sparks from the metal, shield raised as Angron came after him through the falling ruin. Spinegrinder hit the wall beside him and opened it like flesh. The lion pushed off, twisted in the air, and struck Angron's face with the edge of the shield. Golden force burst. Angron crashed through a vault roof below. The lion followed, landing in a crouch amid smoke, grinding debris, and the screams of the machinery beneath the world. They had fallen into the industrial underbelly of Wormwood. Here the planet's blasphemy was naked. Demonic assembly lines stretched through cavernous depths, lit by furnace pits and rivers of molten brass. Conveyor. Chains dragged cages full of mortal captives toward engines that opened them with mechanical tenderness and emptied them into molds. Souls were drawn from bodies in luminous threads and woven through frames of black iron. Brass limbs twitched before being attached to torsos made from meat that still screamed. Machine priests of the Arcaphane moved along gantries, their robes stiff with dried blood, their augmetics clicking in worshipful rhythm. A half-born demon engine turned its eyeless head toward the Primarchs. Angron seized it by the skull and used it as a club. The thing shrieked as he swung it into the lion. The Emperor's shield met the blow and shattered the construct, blasting fragments of brass, bone, and wet organs across the assembly line. The force drove the lion back several paces. His boots skidded in blood oil. Angron followed with Samniarius, forcing him to raise fealty in a hard parry that sent black sparks crawling up the blade. "You fled," Angron snarled. "You hid in forests. You slept while the galaxy burned." The lion's eyes did not leave his brother's center mass. "I woke." Angron swung again. The lion ducked beneath the chain axe, cut the inside of Angron's elbow, and rammed the shield into the wounded joint. The arm bent wrong. Spine-grinder dipped. The lion stepped in and drove his shoulder into Angron's torso, not to overpower him, but to turn him. Angron's next strike tore apart a pressure column instead of the lion's skull. Steam screamed from the ruptured pipe. The lion saw it. Not fully, not yet, but the battlefield spoke to him in the old language of the hunt. Heat vents, pressure lines, gantries weakened by cannon recoil, pits beneath thin floor plates, chains under load, cooling conduits connected to furnace hearts. The underworld of Wormwood was not wilderness, but it had patterns. Every killing ground had trails. Every beast had a direction it preferred to charge. Every engine had a point where force became failure. Angron roared and tore the pressure column free, hurling it like a spear. The lion turned it with the shield. The column spun away and smashed through a line of machine priests, reducing them to limbs, robes, and augmetic wreckage. He moved beneath another blow, cutting the tendon at the back of Angron's other knee. The wound closed almost at once. Almost. Enough. Angron's rage swelled because the lion would not give him what he wanted. No confession, no accusation hurled back with equal fury, no exchange of ancient hurts, no brotherly hatred dignified into drama. The lion denied him the pleasure of being met as a storm. He reduced him to prey, wounded, guided, studied. "You were my brother," the lion said. Angron surged forward, jaws open, wings scraping the cavern roof. The lion raised the shield and took the charge at an angle. Golden light flared as Angron's mass struck. The rebound cracked the floor beneath the demon Primarch's feet and sent tremors through the surrounding assembly lines. "Now you are only a wound with a name." Angron's answer was a roar that burst furnace glass and tore chained souls from their bindings. He attacked with everything. Spine-grinder came from above, Samniarius from the side. A wing smashed low to break the lion's legs. The lion moved through the assault by fractions, shield turning the axe, fealty catching the demon blade, his footwork carrying him over the wing strike. The edge of Samniarius scored his armor and drew blood. Spine-grinder's backswing clipped the shield hard enough to numb even Primarch bone. Angron was too strong to dismiss, too fast to mock, too enduring to simply cut down. Every mistake would have been death. Every successful defense still cost flesh, breath, and ground. The lion gave ground anyway. He gave it toward the steam vents, toward the unstable pressure lines, toward the floor plates already buckling beneath Angron's weight. Around them, Wormwood's machines continued to birth horrors. Brass newborns screamed on hooks. Mortal captives ruptured as their souls were extracted in shining threads. Forge bells rang from towers buried beneath the world. Somewhere above, armies fought for landing corridors and extraction points. Somewhere beyond, Vashtor's greater engine turned toward completion. The lion saw the vents flare again. He saw the rhythm. He saw the pressure cycle build beneath the plates behind him and to the left. He saw Angron's ruined knee favor the charge. He saw the demon Primarch's rage blind him to the ground. He saw the line of chains above, the cooling artery along the wall, the furnace gate half open at the end of the assembly path. At last, the killing ground had a shape. Angron lowered his head and came on, The lion stopped retreating. Near Wormwood's core, the world no longer pretended to be a world. There was no sky, no street, no battlefield that sane eyes could name as such. There was only the infected heart of a god machine, a vast cavern of brass arteries, iron ribs, black roots, and furnace organs pumping warp light through the bones of dead Caliban. Chains as thick as fortress towers swayed from vaults lost in smoke. Rivers of molten metal ran through channels lined with teeth. Pistons rose and fell with the rhythm of diseased lungs, crushing screaming shapes into new forms beneath stamping anvils. Souls were dragged through glass tubes in pale threads, stretched thin until they sang, then woven into engines that kicked and shrieked upon assembly racks. Reality thinned there. The warp pressed close on every side, not as a distant storm, but as a presence beyond the walls, breathing against the skin of the universe. Shadows moved before bodies cast them. Blood flowed upward from cracks in the floor. The air trembled with unfinished demons clawing at the moment before birth. Every sound had an echo that did not belong to it. Every flame burned in the shape of a screaming face before collapsing back into heat. Angron came through that hell like its rightful master. He struck the lion with Spinegrinder, and the blow hurled the Primarch of the First Legion across a gantry of black iron. The lion hit hard, boots tearing through the metal grating, one knee dipping before he forced himself upright. His armor was cracked across the breastplate and left pauldron. Blood ran beneath the green ceramite, warm along his ribs, hot under the sealed pressure of his warplate. One gauntlet had lost 2 knuckle plates. His cloak was torn, burned, and wet with the demon Primarch's blood and his own. He raised the Emperor's shield in time to meet the next strike. Spinegrinder hit like a collapsing gate. Golden force burst from the shield's face. The impact drove the lion backward, boots carving twin scars through the gantry. Pain flared up his arm and into his shoulder. The shield held. It always held. But holding was not the same as ease. Every blow Angron landed carried the weight of a falling hab block, and even the Emperor's gift could not make consequence vanish. The lion felt every shock in bone, every recoil in muscle, every stolen breath. Angron roared and swung Samniarius from the side. The lion turned, catching the demon blade on fealty. Black flame crawled along the sword's edge and licked across his vambrace, leaving scars in the armor that smoked with warp heat. He broke the bind with a twist, stepped inside the Red Angel's reach, and cut across Angron's abdomen. The wound opened deep. Demon flesh parted in a rush of black-red blood, exposing rib, intestine, brass cable, and furnace light. For the span of a heartbeat, Angron's body was broken open from hip to sternum. No mortal thing could have remained standing. No space marine, no dreadnought, no tyrant of flesh and bone could have endured such ruin. Angron laughed through clenched teeth. The wound boiled. Flesh crawled across the opening in ropes. Broken organs dragged themselves back into position. Bone reshaped with wet cracks. Brass implants sealed into regrown meat. The blood pouring down his torso ignited, became steam, became red lightning, then vanished back into him as if even spilled gore feared to leave its master. The cut closed. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but enough. His rage grew. Every wound was fuel. Every denial became hunger. Every pain reminded him of chains, of arenas, of masters, of brothers, of the nails biting and biting and biting until thought became a cage too small for hatred. "Cut!" Angron snarled. "Cut again. I heal, I kill, I kill, I kill." The lion's breathing was steady, though blood filled one side of his mouth. "You endure," he said. "That is not victory," Angron charged. The gantry buckled beneath his weight. Spinegrinder came down in a diagonal arc that would have split a battle tank from turret to track. The lion stepped back, then back again, shield angled. The first impact slid across the Emperor's shield and blasted a wave of golden recoil into Angron's shoulder. The second struck the gantry, chewing through iron struts and sending a section of the platform falling into the molten river below. The third came too fast, too heavy, too close. The lion blocked it. The force drove him to one knee. For an instant, Angron loomed over him, vast and burning, wings scraping sparks from the machinery overhead. Samniarius thrust down toward the lion's throat. Fealty rose. The blade turned the thrust aside by inches. Samniarius scored the side of the lion's helm, tearing through the outer plate and leaving warp fire seared across his cheek beneath. The heat bit deeper than flame should. The lion smelled his own blood, his own burned flesh, and the old iron stink of Angron's breath. Angron kicked him. The blow lifted the lion from the gantry and threw him through a hanging curtain of chains. Links snapped and whipped around him. He hit a pressure housing shoulder first, cracking the outer shell. Steam vented from the wounded pipe in a shrieking plume, hot enough to peel paint from armor. The lion dropped to the floor among coils of chain and grinding machine debris. Angron landed before him. The demon Primarch brought Spinegrinder down to finish him. The lion rolled toward the blow instead of away from it. The chain axe struck the pressure housing. Its teeth bit through armored pipe. Superheated steam erupted in a white blast that swallowed both Primarchs. The spray struck Angron full in the face and chest, blistering demon flesh, stripping blood from armor, boiling one eye in its socket before the meat could remake it. The lion came out of the steam low, driving fealty into Angron's thigh, then ripping the blade free in a hard upward cut that severed tendons before they could brace. Angron staggered. The floor beneath him shifted. The lion had seen the cycle. The pressure vent, the load-bearing chain, the half-cracked gantry, the unstable plates around the furnace gate. He had given ground toward them because the battlefield had offered no fairness, and he had never asked for fairness from war. He had asked only where a beast would fall if made angry enough to stop seeing the ground. Angron saw none of it. He saw only the lion. "Coward!" he roared. "Hunter! Liar! Brother! Come close!" The lion did not answer. That enraged him more than any insult could have done. Angron surged forward with both weapons raised. The floor plates groaned beneath the impact of his stride. The lion retreated by one step, then another, shield high, blade low. Samniarius came first. He turned it with fealty, letting the demon blade slide away in sparks of black and silver. Spinegrinder followed. The Emperor's shield took the blow and sent its violence back into Angron's arm. Bone cracked. The demon Primarch's elbow bent, then snapped back into place with a wet reshaping. He kept coming. The lion's heel touched the edge of the cracked plate. He stopped. Angron mistook stillness for failure. He committed everything to the killing stroke. Spinegrinder rose above him, chain teeth screaming with a hunger so loud it drowned the forge bells. Samniarius drew back to strike from the opposite side, a crossing blow meant to trap the lion between axe and demon blade. Angron's wings flared, his muscles bunched, his ruined knee bent, regrown but imperfect. The world beneath him trembled. The lion moved at the last possible instant. He stepped inside the arc of Samniarius and slammed the Emperor's shield into Angron's weapon arm, not to stop the blade, but to turn the shoulder. The demon sword missed by the breadth of a gauntlet and carved into the chain above them. The chain snapped. A suspended engine block plunged, dragging more chains with it, smashing into the gantry behind Angron and tearing the floor open. Spinegrinder descended. The lion angled the shield. The blow glanced. Not cleanly. The impact split the already cracked plate beneath his boots and sent pain spearing through his left arm. But the axe missed his skull and buried itself in the unstable ground. Angron's own momentum carried him forward. The floor collapsed under his leading foot. The Red Angel lurched, one leg dropping into the rupturing plate, weight shifting, torso open for less than a breath. The lion was already there. Fealty drove, upward into Angron's throat. The blade entered beneath the jaw and punched through demon flesh, cartilage, brass cabling, and corrupted bone. It burst from the back of Angron's neck in a spray of warp fire and boiling blood. The sound Angron made was not a roar. It was a broken engine trying to become a scream. The wound did not close. For the first time, the regeneration faltered. Flesh crawled toward the blade and recoiled from it. Bone tried to reshape around the steel and cracked apart. Blood poured down the weapon in smoking sheets. Angron's body convulsed, rage forcing it to continue, Khorne's will dragging it toward murder, even as fealty pinned the red flood inside him and turned his throat into a gate that would not heal. Angron dropped to one knee. The impact cracked the plates beneath him wider. His claws scraped at the floor. Samniarius fell from one hand, still chained to his wrist, its edge biting sparks from the ground as his arm spasmed. Spinegrinder tore free from the broken plate as he tried to rise. Even with fealty through his throat, even choking on warp fire and his own burning blood, he still tried to kill. The lion held the sword in place and looked into his brother's eyes. There was no plea there, no understanding, no regret, only hatred, endless and enslaved, too vast to learn from defeat. Angron's jaws worked around the blade. Blood and flame poured from his mouth. "Skulls," he gurgled. The lion's expression did not change. "No." He wrenched fealty free. Angron surged upward on sheer rage, throat torn open, blood spraying in a hot arc across the lion's shield and helm. Spinegrinder rose again, slower, but still strong enough to kill a god's son. The lion did not step back. He did not hesitate. He did not pity what his brother had become, because pity would have taken a breath, and a breath was more than Angron deserved in that moment. The Emperor's shield came around, not as a noble icon, not as a banner of salvation, not as the symbol of a father's protection, as an execution tool. The lion drove the shield's edge into Angron's neck, with every measure of strength left in him. Golden force erupted from the impact. The already ruined throat split wider. Angron's head snapped to the side, held for an instant by demon sinew and brass chain. The lion struck again. The shield bit deeper. A third blow followed, brutal, exact, without ceremony. The golden edge passed through. Angron's head came away. For a heartbeat, the demon Primarch's body remained kneeling, weapons chained to dead hands, wings spread, throat vomiting fire into the thinning air. The severed head struck the floor and rolled, horns scraping sparks, eyes still burning with mindless hatred. Its mouth opened to roar, but the sound that emerged was dragged backward into somewhere far worse than silence. Then the banishment came. Angron's body detonated into warp storm violence. The cavern vanished behind red light. Brass chains screamed as if alive. The molten rivers surged upward in bloody pillars. Demonic assembly lines tore free from their mountings and thrashed like dying serpents. Machine priests burst apart, their augmetics spinning through the air, trailing nerves and strips of robe. Half-formed demon engines howled as the force of Angron's unmaking ripped the souls from their frames. The Red Angel's blood became burning mist, each droplet a tiny furnace, each furnace screaming hate before dissolving into the Empyrean. The severed head cracked apart, the eyes burned brighter. Something vast answered from beyond reality, a throne of skulls, a god's laughter without joy. Chains made from murder reached through the wound in the world and dragged the Red Angel's rage backward. Angron's essence fought even that. It clawed at the air. It tried to remain. It tried to kill after the body was gone. The warp took him howling, not in surrender, never in surrender, but in fury denied the final stroke. Then he was gone. The blast threw the lion back against the broken pressure housing. He struck hard and fell to one knee, fealty's point scraping the ground as he caught himself. The Emperor's shield smoked in his grip. Blood ran down his side beneath shattered armor. His left arm trembled once before he forced it still. Around him, Wormwood's core chamber collapsed by degrees. Gantries fell into molten channels. Chains whipped and snapped. Assembly. Racks folded inward, crushing the horrors they had been birthing. Steam and warp flame mingled until the air became a storm of gold, red, and black. The lion stood. Every movement cost him. He paid without complaint. For a moment, The hunt was ended. Angron had been cast down, not slain beyond return. Such mercy was not granted to the galaxy. The Red Angel would crawl from Khorne's realm again, when blood, hate, and the will of his god made a path. But here, on Wormwood, beneath the corpse memory of Caliban, the lion had broken him, denied him, and hurled him screaming back into hell. The lion lifted his gaze. The core chamber was not dying. It was changing. Beneath the collapsing gantries, the furnace heart of Wormwood pulsed brighter. The machinery did not fail with Angron's banishment. It accelerated. Brass roots tightened through the planet's bones. The rivers of molten metal began to flow in new patterns, circling a vast central mechanism buried below the broken floor. The souls in the glass tubes stopped screaming one by one, not because they had been freed, but because something larger had begun to speak through them. Deep within the world, locks turned, engines aligned. A pulse traveled through the planet with the certainty of a door opening. The lion tasted oil, ash, and old forest rain. He understood. Wormwood was not dying. It was awakening. The World Eaters did not retreat when Angron vanished. They should have. Lesser warriors would have broken beneath the psychic thunderclap of their gene sire's banishment. Mortal armies would have cast down their weapons and fled from the smoking crater, where a demon Primarch had been unmade. Even hardened traitors might have staggered, stunned by the sudden absence of that red gravity, that murderous pressure that had dragged them towards slaughter like iron filings to a magnet. The World Eaters only became worse. The absence hurt them. It opened a void inside their skulls where Angron's rage had been, and they filled that void with killing. Berserkers howled until their throats tore, and blood ran from their vox grills. Some hacked at the air where their Primarch's shadow had been. Others turned on the nearest living things, loyalist or traitor, demon or mortal, anything with a pulse or a shape that could be opened. They charged over piles of their own dead and the dead of the unforgiven, chain axes screaming, boots slipping in blood, hands clawing for skulls before blades had even finished their work. The battlefield after Angron was not relief. It was aftershock. Wormwood convulsed beneath the armies. Streets buckled. Towers folded inward and became pits. Manufactorum shrines tore themselves free from their foundations and walked on root limbs of black iron. The sky churned in concentric storms above the dark cathedrum, and beneath the ground a pulse rang through every plate, pipe, bone, and buried gear. It was deep, measured, purposeful. Not the wounded shudder of a dying world, but the heartbeat of an engine that had found its rhythm. Azrael heard it through the soles of his boots. He knew at once that victory had become evacuation. "Withdraw to the eastern plaza," he ordered. "All surviving elements. No pursuit, no trophies, no delay." Around him, the unforgiven pulled back by fire teams and shield knots, not fleeing, but cutting their way out of a trap that was closing with planetary teeth. Dark Angels fired until magazines ran empty, then switched to pistols, then blades. Deathwing Terminators formed walls around the wounded, walking backward beneath constant impact. Storm shields locked as chain axes, claws, and demon blades struck sparks from their faces. Intercessors dragged brothers with missing legs through sludge made from blood, ash, promethium, and minced flesh. Apothecaries moved like executioners of mercy, sealing wounds that could be sealed and harvesting progenoids from those who could not be moved. Belial was carried by Deathwing survivors. He lived, though only in the way a warrior entombed within duty could live after Angron's hands had broken him. His armor had been cut open, crushed, split, and burned. Blood seeped from fractures in the plate. One arm hung useless. His helm had been removed, and his face beneath was pale, ruined, and still conscious enough to hate the indignity of being born from the field. "Put me down," Belial growled. The Terminator carrying him did not slow. No. Belial's remaining eye opened wider, fury gathering. Azrael's voice cut across the channel. "You will endure, Grandmaster. That is your command." Belial said nothing after that. He simply gripped the edge of the shield platform beneath him, hard enough to crack the ceramite. Dante should not have been standing, yet he stood. The Lord of the Blood Angels moved with one wing of his jump pack torn away, armor broken, blood darkening the gold of his chest plate and the red beneath. The death mask of Sanguinius was dented and scorched, its serene beauty violated by claw marks and impact scars. One hand shook around the haft of the Ax Mortalis. The other was missing fingers beneath a field dressing of blood seals and hardening medici foam. He moved as though each step required negotiation with death. Death was refused. A collapsing wall came down over a group of wounded blood angels and dark angels near the extraction path. Dante turned before any order could be given. His jump pack coughed, failed, caught again in a stuttering burst of flame, and hurled him forward just far enough. He struck the falling masonry with his shoulder and axe, not stopping it fully, but altering its descent. The wall crashed aside, crushing 2 world eaters instead of the wounded beneath it. Dante landed on one knee, coughed blood into his mask, and rose before anyone could help him. Aphael reached his side. "My lord, you must fall back." Dante looked across the field, where gunships burned and brothers died by inches. "I am falling back," he said, slowly. Aphael did not argue. There was no time, and perhaps no right. The extraction route became another battlefield before the first Thunderhawk could descend. The western ruins split apart under a tide of filth, and the stink came before the daemons. It rolled over the plaza in a wet, sweet wave, a reek of opened bowels, plague vats, rotting meat, and stagnant water trapped beneath corpses for centuries. Dark angels sealed their helms tighter. Blood angels spat curses through vox grills. Servo skulls dropped from the air as their suspensors clogged with buzzing flies. Nurgle's demons came laughing. Plague-bearers shambled through the breach in obscene ranks, counting in dull voices as bolter fire tore them apart. Their bodies burst open when struck, spraying yellow bile, black blood, and ropes of infected intestine across armor and stone. Nurglings poured through cracks in the ground, biting at exposed seals, crawling into wounds, giggling as they were crushed under boots. Behind them came demon engines swollen with rust and fat, their armor plates cracked by growths of horn and blistered flesh, their exhaust stacks vomiting clouds of corpse gas. At their center crawled Urgablaks. It was a mound of plague meat fused to iron, a demon engine or greater demon or both, made indistinct by the abundance of its corruption. Its belly dragged across the ground and split open wherever broken stone cut it, leaving trails of pus that smoked when it touched Wormwood's brass. Limbs too small for its mass clawed at the earth. Larger arms ended in cleavers, rusted cannon mouths, and chains dragging bells made from skulls. Its face was a collapsing mask of joy, sorrow, and rot, 3 eyes blinking in different rhythms above a mouth full of cracked human teeth. It vomited plague fire into the retreating column. A squad of dark angels vanished beneath it. Their armor blackened, then softened, then burst as the flesh inside expanded too fast for the plate to contain. One warrior staggered from the cloud, with his chest split open by fungal growths, still firing his bolter, until a blood angel put a bolt round through his helm to stop the thing using his corpse. Azrael turned toward the new threat. Devastators, left ruin, target the mass. Lascannon's dry, came the reply. Missiles. 2 remaining. Use them. The missiles struck Urgablaks in the shoulder and belly, opening craters that vomited maggots, smoke, and black organs large as men. The demon laughed. The sound caused mortal serfs sheltering behind a wrecked rhino to cough blood into their rebreathers. A dreadnought advanced to meet it, sarcophagus speakers growling an oath from a warrior whose flesh had died long ago. I have endured worse gardens. Urgablaks swung a cleaver arm. The dreadnought caught it on his fist, crushed the rusted blade, and drove his multi-melter into the demon's gut. White heat punched through the plague mass and out the other side. For a moment, the monster's laughter stopped. Then it leaned forward and swallowed the dreadnaught's weapon arm to the elbow, teeth grinding over adamantium. Samael broke the deadlock. The Raven Wing came through the eastern avenue in a spearhead of black speed. Bikes vaulted broken ridges. Land speeders skimmed between collapsing towers. Plasma talons flashed, burning Nurgle demons into bubbling slag. Samael rode at the front, blade low, corvex cutting through filth mist as though the air itself were an enemy formation. "Corridor opening," he voxed. "Move now!" Ravenwing melter charges detonated along the Daemon engine's flank. Urgablax reeled, its belly splitting wider, its laughter becoming a drowning gargle. The dreadnought tore free and drove his power fist through the creature's lowest eye. Blood, pus, and green flame burst out over his arm. Samael's plasma fire took the second eye. A Blood Angel squad finished the third, with crack grenades thrown into the socket at point-blank range. The demon collapsed, but did not die cleanly. Nothing of Nurgle did. It burst into a flood of living rot that chased the retreating warriors across the plaza until librarians raised wards and burned it back with psychic flame. Then the shadows returned. They opened near Azrael, cold amid the furnace heat, smelling of rain and old forests. The lion stepped from them with fealty in one hand and the Emperor's shield smoking in the other. His armor was cracked. Blood ran down his side. His cloak hung in burned strips. He looked wounded, ancient, and more dangerous for both. Behind him came the Risen. Azrael's grip tightened on his sword. For one heartbeat, father and son faced one another while the world died around them. Azrael saw the returned Primarch, the impossible answer to 10,000 years of absence. He saw the warriors behind him, men who should have been hunted, chained, interrogated, judged. Fury rose cold and perfect inside him. The lion looked at him, not with apology, not with request, with command. "Later," the lion said. Azrael hated that it was the correct word. He bowed his head by the smallest measure. "My lord." The Risen moved past him into the demon host. They did not fight as forgiven saints. No absolution shone upon them. No brotherhood welcomed them cleanly into the ranks they had once sundered. They fought as condemned warriors buying a future with their bodies, because no other currency remained. One stood over a fallen dark angel and killed 3 plague bearers with an ancient bolter before a rusted blade opened him from throat to groin. He kept firing as his organs spilled down his armor. Another drove a melter charge into the mouth of a demon engine and held it there while the machine chewed through his arm, shoulder, and chest. The blast erased them both. A Deathwing knight saw a Risen warrior fall beneath a pack of World Eaters and hesitated only long enough to decide hatred could wait. He waded in, mace swinging, and crushed the berserkers into broken red shells. The Risen looked up from beneath the gore, helm cracked, voice full of static. "Do I live?" "For now," the knight said. "Then I remain condemned." "Yes." "Good." They fought on. The extraction corridor opened by inches. Thunderhawks descended through flak and warp light, their hulls hammered by ground fire. One took a lance strike through the starboard engine and spun into a tower, exploding in a blossom of fire that consumed the wounded it had come to save. Another landed hard in the eastern plaza, ramp dropping before its skids had settled. Serfs, apothecaries, and battle brothers loaded casualties under fire. Storm ravens hovered low, assault cannons chewing through cultists and demons, while blood angels lifted wounded brothers into their holds. Drop pods became cover, rhinos became barricades. Every extraction was a small siege. Wormwood convulsed harder. The ground rose and fell like a breathing chest. The dark cathedral split from foundation to crown, not collapsing, but unfolding. The Warpforge palace beyond it rotated toward the sky. Vast rings of black machinery emerged from beneath the crust. Brass roots tightened into a lattice. Soul light moved through them in streams, converging far below the surface. The pulse became a tone. The tone became a Cord. The cord became a command that made the teeth ache and the spirit recoil. The rock fired. From orbit, the fortress monastery unleashed judgment upon the corpse of Caliban. Lance batteries struck first, spearing through cloud, ash, and warp storm to stab into the dark cathedral and surrounding engine fields. Macro cannon shells followed, vast and relentless, hammering the primary continent with firestorms that turned corrupted districts into molten glass. Cyclonic warheads and tectonic charges fell in sealed patterns calculated to break planetary structure. Battle barges added broadsides. Strike cruisers poured torpedoes into the wounds opened by the rock. Wormwood burned beneath the fury of the unforgiven. For a moment, it seemed enough. The dark cathedral vanished in a pillar of white fire. Continental plates split. Demon forges collapsed into their own furnaces. Forests of black root ignited from horizon to horizon. Brass mountains buckled. Wormwood's surface peeled back in burning layers, revealing the hellish engine beneath and then burying it under orbital wrath. On the extraction ramps, warriors paused despite themselves. Some believed they were seeing the desecrated ghost of Caliban finally killed. Then the lion's voice crossed every loyalist channel. Withdraw, now. No one asked why. The tone was enough. Wormwood's core has awakened, the lion said. Remaining nearby is annihilation. All forces disengage. The key turns. In the void beyond the burning planet, reality bent. Vashtor's design completed itself. The dissonance engine came alive beneath Wormwood's skin, not as a single machine, but as a planetary truth imposed upon the universe. Every stolen fragment, every gutted shrine, every murdered world, every ark sacrificed, every battle misread by the Imperium as isolated catastrophe had been part of the mechanism. The key awakened, and the sound of it was not heard by ears, but by locks throughout reality, remembering they could be opened. Wormwood did not die. It escaped. The world tore a wound into space. Not translation as ships knew it, not warp jump, not flight. It opened reality like a door and dragged itself through, burning surface, shattered cathedrals, broken roots, and all. The rock's bombardment followed it into the rupture for a few seconds more, vanishing into impossible distance. Then the wound snapped shut with a concussion that hurled ships from formation and cracked the minds of unshielded mortals across the fleet. Silence followed. Not peace, never peace, only absence. The duel had been won. Angron had been broken and hurled back into the warp. Dante lived. Belial lived. The lion stood once more among the sons of the first. The unforgiven had escaped with fragments of their strength and the impossible burden of their returned father. But Vashtor had achieved his purpose. Far away, aboard the vengeful spirit, Abaddon watched the reports arrive and did not celebrate. The butcher's tally had been obscene. Fleets lost, arcs crippled, champions spent. Angron banished again into the red madness of his god, where he would rage, reform, and return when slaughter called him back. The despoiler brooded over the cost, not because cost mattered to his conscience, but because every blade spent had to cut deep enough to justify its breaking. It had. In the dark beyond mortal navigation, Vashtor advanced toward the next phase of his design. Around him, mechanisms clicked in dimensions that had no names. The key had awakened. Doors waited. Locks trembled. The galaxy, ignorant and bleeding, had not yet understood what had been opened. On the rock, amid wounded warriors, silent risen, furious sons, and the dead being carried home in pieces, the lion stood before the viewing ports and looked into the burning dark. He was miracle. He was threat. He was father, king, hunter, judge, and question unanswered. Azrael stood behind him, unable to decide which truth would wound the chapter most deeply. Below them, the wounded were taken to apothecarian slabs. The dead were named. The condemned remained unjudged. The war moved on. A Primarch had returned, a monster had been cast down, and still the galaxy burned.